All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members of the council. I'm going to call this meeting to order. I'd ask that everyone please rise for a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd ask that everyone please remain standing for a moment of silent observation and thought of those troops defending this country all over the globe. Thank you. Okay, would you please read the opening statement?
You're not going to sing the national anthem?
Not tonight. Unless we're going to play baseball.
I'll sing it.
I don't think it's on.
Do it again. Let the minutes reflect that adequate notice of the holding of this special meeting of the Howell Township Council was provided for in the following manner. By the posting of a copy of said notice upon the bulletin board in the Township Municipal Building on April 21st, 2006, by the faxing of a copy of said notice to the Asbury Park Press for publication and to the Tri-Town News for their information on April 21st, 2006, by the filing of a copy of said form of notice in the Township Clerk's office on April 21st, 2006. The public will be allowed to attend and will be allowed to participate pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Law. The public is reminded that civility and decorum will be maintained during the meeting. Any contracts awarded at this meeting or between now and the next meeting will be required to comply with the requirements of Public Law 1975, Chapter 127, NJAC 17:27. In accordance with the Fire Prevention Code, be advised that this facility is designed with 3 emergency exits for your safety. The locations are as follows. Upon exiting the meeting room to the rear, they are to your immediate left and immediate right, and at the front of the meeting room at the left of the dais. Furthermore, smoking is not permitted in the municipal building. Please take note that this meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Malavey?
Here.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Present.
Mr. Tabasco?
Present.
Mr. Walsh?
Here.
Mayor DeBella?
Here. Okay, before we get started, let me just make a brief comment. This meeting is, in fact, our budget workshop meeting, so to speak. We're going to be getting a presentation tonight from Mr. Chernetsky, our township manager, in conjunction with comments from our chief financial officer, Mr. Filiatro. We expect the township engineer, Mr. Nunziato, to be here shortly. We will be getting an update with respect to where things are as of this point with respect to the items we've discussed for the 2006 municipal budget, and it certainly is my hope and my expectation that as a governing body, we make some final business decisions tonight, or at least come about 99% close to readying this budget for introduction. From a calendar perspective, we only recently got state aid figures, so we could not have done this much sooner than we are, but nevertheless, we do have a need to finalize the budget very quickly. I also understand we have some residents here that are concerned about the Aldridge Lake dredging issue, and that is an item that will be discussed under our capital budget. There is a discussion around equipment, manpower, resources, and the things that will be necessary to address that particular issue. When we get to that portion of the capital budget, I will, as a courtesy, obviously, because we work for you folks, we will give you an opportunity, obviously, to come up and make any of your comments on that particular topic, since there was apparently some confusion on the township's website that it said this meeting was both a public participation meeting and a budget workshop meeting. I will tell you, we're really going to try and focus our energies on the municipal budget as a whole. So when we get to that portion, when the Aldridge Lake comment comes up, we'll certainly invite you all to give us your comments, and I suspect many of them may be the same. So I would ask that everyone potentially do their part to try and not repeat, for example, what someone else may or may not have said with respect to that particular item. So having said that, Mr. Chernetsky, we will actually, Mr. Chernetsky, we're not going to recognize you yet. We have with us the post commander from our American Legion Hall. We have the most honorable commander, Ben Novick, who's going to talk about upcoming events for Memorial Day. So, Commander Novick, if you would come forward. As you know, the meeting is televised, so you'll be a star on local television. and it'll give you an opportunity to briefly give us the update on what's happening coming up on the 29th. So why don't you come on up, Commander?
Thank you very much.
And did I say American Legion?
Yes.
I apologize, Commander. It's
Go ahead and use the
veteran,
mic in the
it's a
front there.
veteran of foreign war. Commander, you can use that microphone. It's kind of right
I
there.
don't like to have my back to the people.
Sure.
All right.
You carry well. Go right ahead.
Well, I want to thank the council, the mayor, and the people of Howell Township for supporting the VFW these many years, and we appreciate it greatly. And we'd like to announce our Memorial Day services. The VFW was the first veterans organization to adopt the poppy and develop a national distribution campaign. For more than 75 years, the VFW's Buddy Poppy program has raised millions of dollars in support of veterans, welfare, and the well-being of their dependents. From the beginning, Buddy Poppy has received the support of the Veterans Administration and the endorsement and cooperation of all presidents since Warren Harding. Today, the VFW Buddy Poppies are assembled by disabled, needy, and aging veterans in VA hospitals and domiciliaries across the country and are sold at VFW Post and the Ladies Auxiliary. The minimal assessment cost of the Buddy Poppies to VFW units provides compensation to the veterans who assemble the poppies, provides financial assistance in maintaining state and national veterans rehabilitation and service programs, and partially supports the VFW National Home for Orphans and Widows of our nation's veterans. Memorial services are Monday, May 29th, 10 a.m. at Lutz Park Veterans Memorial in Farmingdale, and 11 a.m. Howell Township Municipal Building Veterans Memorial. So I'd like to leave you with our flyer,
Please.
and if you could post it in the hallway, we'd appreciate it.
We will do that. If you'd pass that down to Allison from the clerk's office. We're also going to, Commander, have that scanned and posted on the township's website.
Thank you very much. Last April 22nd, our post went to the Menlo Park VA home, and we held an afternoon bingo party for the veterans and their spouses. And they want to thank the people of Howell and Farmingdale and our post for providing them with an afternoon of companionship and fun. So thank you
Terrific.
very much, Mr. Mayor and Council, and we appreciate it.
Thanks for all you do, Commander.
Thank you.
We appreciate your real tribute to the community. You're welcome to stay for our budget meeting. Any ideas or input you
I
have?
thought the meeting started at 7:30.
That's fine.
Okay,
No
thank you.
problem. Okay. All right, so without further delay, Mr. Chernetsky, why don't you give us your budget presentation, and then afterwards we'll get into the specifics.
First of all, I beg your patience, as this is the first time we're...
We don't have
Hold
a
up, Tom.
handheld?
What's the matter?
Jesus Christ.
Nobody's going to hear you.
I'll speak up.
No, but
No, but
in
you're gonna
TV's
record.
not going to record you, I'm telling you. It didn't last week.
Handheld microphone.
Okay. Well, we're trying something new here in terms of how we present the budget. We're going to try to summarize the key points through a PowerPoint presentation and really help council focus on where the decision points need to be. Also, I understand that many of you are here to talk about dredging. That falls under the capital improvement portion of our budget, where there are some choices council's going to have to think about. Mr. Nunziato, our township engineer, is here to answer questions and help us formulate a policy for how we're going to attack that issue. He has done a report. He has been in touch with me about it. There are some decisions council is going to need to make about this. So let me just start with the sort of a big picture. And Mayor, when we get to a point where it's appropriate to deal with capital items, we'll put the dredging issue up center, if that's okay with you.
That's fine, sir.
Okay. Okay, can council see over me?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, the general presentation, we're going to go over the local economic conditions, revenue analysis, budget overview, mandated expenses, new and improved programs that we're proposing, and proposed capital improvements. Talk about some decisions, and this is a first run of this PowerPoint, so we hope to improve it for the budget introduction. For the benefit of the public, the way we've done this is the department heads have come forward and talked about what they think their broad needs are in order to run their department and to bring it forward. Council accepted that input, and throughout the process, the senior staff, the chief finance officer, and I have been taking notes of the direction council's been giving us and making note of some of the things that the department heads have been saying. So we're really coming now down to the wire where we need to introduce the budget. And this is sort of, I guess, from the staff point of view, our last crack at it. And then see where council wants to take us. Okay, I think it's always important to understand where we stand economically as a community. Okay, when you get your tax bill, it's generally broken down. When we send out tax bills and we collect them, we characterize them as the value of land and taxes coming in from vacant property, residential property, farm property, commercial industrial property. Over the years, going back to 1986, you can see that the vacant land accounted for 7% of the value. 7% of the value. Residential, 74%. Farmland and associated structures, 7%. And commercial and industrial, 12%. Really, I guess going all the way back down now to 2006, you could see that commercial and industrial has stayed the same as a percentage of our overall value. Residential has gone up to 83% over the past 20 years. And of course, we could see that that is impacting both vacant land and farmland. Okay, so how do we rate? When if we list some of our surrounding communities and other communities that we're often compared to, in terms of our commercial and industrial base, we rank 5th in this list of Middleton, Manalapan, Marlborough, Wall, Jackson, Manchester, Lakewood, Brick, and Dover. That's the commercial portion, and we're at 12% again. And on this list, on the residential portion, we rank 6th. What's interesting to point out is that the industrial portion of our commercial base is 2%, which is 3rd on that list. Why is that critical? You know, there are studies that indicate retail space is a function of how much traffic passes, how much income the people in those cars have, and the surrounding neighborhood, the income of the surrounding neighborhood. And you can take that formula anywhere in the world, and you will get the amount of retail space you have based on that formula. So that's never considered what's called your base economy. Your base economy are those things that you send outside of the town, and that's really an engine of economic growth. If you, for example, think of Silicon Valley as attracting people who produce something that's sent outside of that region. What has that done for local property values, and what has that done for local retail services? So that's what local planners call your base economy, and that's what we really need to focus on going down the road to really increase the commercial and industrial portion of our tax base. So I know the council's talked a lot about Route 9 and Route 33 in terms of future development, and I think we need to continue giving a lot of thought to that. Okay, where does the municipal tax dollar go?
Doesn't go to our speakers.
Mr. Filiatro was trying to see if this would work.
Can you not hear me all right?
No,
Yeah, we just wanted to make it easier,
That's all right.
as usual.
Okay.
We're trying, Mayor.
For every tax dollar the residents of Howell pay, 50 cents goes to support local schools, 4 cents goes to support the fire districts on average, 15 cents goes to support county government, 11 cents comes here to the municipal government. I think it's more than 1 cent, Jeffrey, it's 2 cents for open space. and a regional school district is 18 cents. But let's just look at that 11 cents for municipal operations, which is why we're here tonight, for a second. The 2004 New Jersey Legislative District Data Book, which is always prepared a few years after the fact, does a real interesting statistic where it takes the municipal budget and it divides it by the residents to come up with a per capita cost. How much does each municipality spend per resident? And just want to show you on this list of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, of the 13 communities, we're about 10th down on that list that we looked at. We spend, in 2000, at the end of close of 2004, we spent $653 per resident. In Howell Township, for example, it was $929 per resident. Now, grant you, there's a lot of variables that can go into this, but it still paints an interesting picture. It's not so much that we're better or worse, but I think the bottom line is that we're holding our own in terms of expenditures. Another sort of interesting statistic that the manual puts out is something called the district factor group, which this is what the Department of Education has come up with, and it's really the most comprehensive measure of the socioeconomic standing of your community, and they use that for state aid. Howell is a FG district factor group, and it doesn't seem to influence much how much spending happens, but so the wealth of the community isn't necessarily an indicator of how much you spend per resident. What's more interesting, I think, is again your commercial and industrial base, because if we just look at what Wall spends per resident, and let's go back here, and you can see that 20% of their tax base comes from commercial and industrial properties. So pointing the need to really focus on Route 9 and Route 33, and in many of these communities where, and even Lakewood, which has a pretty high commercial base, that money goes back into residential services.
I noticed you didn't have a freehold in that commercial-based chart in Freehold Township, where it's about 20% or more, too. A couple charts back.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that, the chart, I'm sorry, that other chart was already on hand before I went into this exercise. Okay, looking at our revenue. Jeffrey, I'm going to ask you to walk us through the revenue picture here.
What we have there, and the numbers are, I don't know, council's eyes are as good as mine, but
So you can't see it either, Jeffrey?
I have it right here.
These in a second.
I have it right here. Basically, it's a comparison of 2004, 5, and 6. So the 2004 are the actual figures. The 5 and 6 figures are the budget amounts. We're holding our own in surplus. As I mentioned to you when I gave a report on the annual financial statement at the beginning of the budget process, that we did replace our surplus, and we are proposing roughly a similar amount. It's down slightly from last year as far as what we're using in the budget, and that's due in part to the deferred charges that we have and we have to set aside for. Our miscellaneous revenues are expected to be up almost 8.8%, 8.79%. Certainly that's no help from the state of New Jersey. It's a reflection of additional revenues and then some of the recovery we have in the economy and our other revenues that are coming up. I know council has been looking at the fees and upgrading them from time to time. Certainly, with the interest rates going up, we realized a lot more interest income last year than we did the year before, and they're all factors that are helping to bring those up.
Mr. Filiatro, you're referencing the number that is the up by 8.79%?
Yes, sir.
The miscellaneous?
Yes, sir.
What's an example of miscellaneous?
I believe off of this.
Interest on investments, permits and fees, building permits, all the township-type fees and charges.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Filiaccio, am I correct? I see about 650,000 of that is interest on investments?
And you're looking at the big revenue sheet?
I mean, I can't see that board, so I'll have to go off of
Well,
what you
we're not
have.
working on the same revenue sheet, but let me look and see what
Yeah, because
you're
this one's
looking
not
at.
with that.
That's 05. This is 05s.
This is sitting right in front of us.
I don't see the 650,000, I don't understand what you're.
And the sheet we have in front of us, I think, though, is a 2005 anticipated and an 05 realized. I don't think it's those numbers.
Well, that's what, Mayor, that's what I'm looking at, went up $650,000.
Mr. Walsh, I understand what you're looking at. You would explain what you're looking at. Perhaps I can explain.
I'm looking at miscellaneous revenues. 2005 anticipated was $495,000 in interest on investments.
Okay.
Realized was $1.131 million.
Okay.
Is that where most of our rise came in revenues?
Well, it certainly is a big factor there. There are many others there. Construction code, 1.2 million, we actually received 1.3. Fines, fees and permits, 473,000, we actually received 525. It's all an indication of an improving economy.
Okay.
And that's, all of those numbers have been recapped down into the 15.3 last year to 16.6 that we can anticipate this year. Delinquent taxes has remained relatively flat, which I guess is better than going down. As a sideline, I do want to make note that the first set of foreclosures on the old tax title liens has been completed. I received the deeds today, so we can start transferring some of that land either into public use or auction it off and get our money out of it.
Does that include, I understand that, I'm going to pronounce it wrong, but what is it, the Bonamo or?
Bonanno.
The Bonanno property?
Yes, that property has been foreclosed. It is
So
now
now the
ours.
township, by
Oh,
virtue of this
it's
tax
35
situation,
acres.
it's 35 acres. And where is that located?
Oakland Road, down by the railroad tracks, and that general facility. We're going to have engineering check it out and look at it. We're going to try to determine how much of that is wet, if any.
Are there any structures on that property, do we know of?
No, it's all assessed as land. That has been 10 years in the making to
Are we going to be
get that.
getting some sort of a
back.
memo with an update that lists
Yes.
all that activity? Okay, terrific.
And of course, we have the final figure is our property taxes, which is the final balancing figure in order to make our budget balance, and that is what we're focusing on, what we've been talking about the last 5 meetings.
So 27% of our revenues come from the sold municipal tax rate.
Yes.
Okay, Mayor, the next item is a summary of the budget that's being proposed.
Hey, Tom, grab that mic again.
Okay, this is a general summary of the budget that's before you, and we'll get into more details as we go along. We're required to increase the reserve for uncollected taxes. For the benefit of the public, it's not a reserve that, like a surplus reserve. What this means is all those other taxing entities I showed you before, the schools, the county, what have you, they don't have tax collectors. They set a tax rate, and they expect to collect 100% of their tax rate. So the township needs to raise all of that money in order to pay those other entities. What we don't collect from taxes, the difference between 100% collection and what we actually do collect, is called the reserve for uncollected taxes. As the budgets go up for the school districts or the county, what have you, that number increases, and we're required to fund it. They get their checks no matter what. So the first item in any budget is looking at what your collection rate from the previous year, which is very good, was 97.5, and a difference between 100%. Correct?
Yes.
97.5? Okay. The next item are the salary increases that are being proposed. Of the difference between 2005 and 2006 is $346,000, $346,882, which represents 1.9% increase. Of that, only $115,000 is for proposed new positions. The balance of that represents contractual increases. What is not included, what we did not include and we did not propose is any salary adjustments. Okay? In terms of, just paying people more, and, other than what the contract calls for.
And Mr. Truneski, I take it that that 115,000 is roughly 6 months' worth of an annualized.
That's correct.
I would like to point out, while we're looking at these figures, is this year you see the effect of since you funded youth and family services all year while the privatization was going, this year you see the effect of the closure of youth and family. So your salary and wage is especially really look out of place. You know, we basically run about $700,000 in contractual raises, and we are again this year, but because of the effect of the closure, it offsets a lot of that.
So net, if you take out the 115, contractual increases that we're bound by are $231,000 in increases, which is the difference between the 346 and the 115.
Correct.
And can I ask a question, Tom?
Yes, sir.
115,000 is proposed new positions,
Correct.
and is that how many people?
I will get to that in a short
Okay.
second.
Just so I understand it, this is for 6 months or
Correct.
12 months?
No, 6 months because we're coming into June.
The reason it's 6 months, Councilman Walsh, is we've already appropriated on a temporary basis at least half of this budget because of when state aid becomes available. So if, for example, we were to agree, and we'll see when we get there, but if we were to agree to these adds to staff, the earliest, for example, they could bring these people on would be July.
Okay.
So for this year, they're only going to pay them salaries, medical benefits, FICA, pension contributions
Right.
for 6 of the 12 months.
Right.
So that 115 is really more like 330 on an annualized basis.
Right.
So we would absorb half of it this year, but in the event these positions were to be added, next year on a compounded basis, it would reflect more in the tune of 330,000.
Correct. Plus benefits.
Plus, we'd have to
Plus
look
benefits.
at next year, the other 450,000, Jeffrey, from Youth and Family Services coming out. It wouldn't,
No, it's already out of this.
No,
it's already out.
It's already out. It's just that
Otherwise it would've been up
it
about
kind of
a-
skews the
You kinda skews the
comparison
number
between the
right
2
now.
years
That's
this
the
year.
word.
It's not going to skew it next year.
Okay.
Okay. The O&E, the O&E portion of the budget, the difference between last year and what's proposed for this year is approximately $1.6 million, or approximately a 14% difference.
Can I, Mr. Chansky, and I apologize, I just want to go back to make sure I understand this. The reserve you're talking about at the top is the portion that's represented as a function of reserve for uncollected taxes.
Reserve for uncollected taxes,
Okay.
yes. Not money we're just setting aside for a
So
rainy day or
that's-
anything
okay.
like that.
Okay. And at some point, we'll have an opportunity to come back to that and talk about that,
Yes,
the
sir.
percentage, okay.
The O&E portion, the approximately 14%, is driven by things the state is doing to us, and I'll get to that shortly. The debt is reflective, the debt item, the 1.639 difference between this year's debt and last year's debt reflects a consolidation of debt that we did, so we're starting payments, but a significant portion of that is to fund property acquisition. And then the amount of, the amount we're proposing for down payment for capital improvement is basically the same, only a $1,000 increase. That's 5% of a down payment on investments. And you will get into the detail of those investments. And that's where we'll bring up the dredging of the lakes.
And before we go on, just that if you wouldn't mind, Mr. Chuneski, where, for example, would medical benefits, pension, FICA, is that represented in that slide?
The O&E, yeah.
So that's all in O&E.
Right.
So that includes, for example, benefits, pension, FICA tax.
Right. It's going to be spelled out in detail.
It is.
Mayor.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Yes. Just to, cut to the chase.
The answer is no.
What does that have to do with? How does that impact what we would need in additional revenue from taxes? That all reflects an 8.54 cent tax increase. The portion that would, just on a percentage basis, the portion of that would go into salary and wages, because realize we're bringing in new revenue, okay? So there's a revenue coming in that's not tax related. So if we back that out, then the amount of new taxes that would go to support salary and wages would be less than a point, and O&E would be about 3.4 points.
So said another way, this budget, albeit it has not been adopted and we need to work the detail, is talking about $2.5 million in additional revenue to be collected.
Okay. Tax revenue, yes. Okay. Mandated and costs that we really can't control. They're sort of outside of our ability right now. We have contracts with labor unions that call for specific wage increases. The total of that is $743,000. The state pensions, and I'll show the detail of that, both for public employee retirement system and the police and fire retirement system, is nearly $500,000, which the state previously covered. And the pain isn't ending with that. There'll be more next year in terms of what they're asking us to come up with. Social Security increases were about, as a result of the salary increases, about $50,000. And we're really being hammered with fuel and utilities at a rate of approximately $200,000.
Do you have a total on that page, Mr. Chernetsky?
No, that was all rolled up in the O&E.
About 1.4. It's about 1.4.
Okay. Some of the highlights, things that we'd like to do.
Thank you.
Things that I heard were important from the council, and that we kept in here for further discussion. We have new recreational facilities coming online in the form of Phase 2 for the Bonham Park improvements or development. We are now engaged in picking up cardboard curbside for residents so they don't have to bring it down here through a new contract. We're calling for improved traffic safety, which is something council has heard a lot about. In my office, we receive a lot of calls about leaf pickup, snow removal, and those items. We'd like to address that a little bit. Lake dredging is also an item, and enhanced engineering services. A number of these proposals come out of the municipal efficiency report, and where they don't, I will have to explain why that is.
Could you just hold that page, that slide? Just want to make some quick notes, please. When we say improve snow, what is it that we're anticipating to improve?
Time frame?
Well, it's a combination of equipment and manpower,
Okay,
which is what's being proposed.
gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. Throughout this process, I received phone calls from council members asking me, can you tell me this information or what have you? And so this is one question. Salaries and wages, what percent of the actual budget? In 2005, it was 50%. In 2006, based on what's being proposed, it's 46.05%.
And when we say salary and wages, does that include or exclude the cost of medical benefits?
That does not include the cost of medical
Excellent.
benefits. Correct, Jeffrey?
No, that's just straight wages.
Straight wages. Okay, the proposed new hires. Mayor, the first item, the assistant engineer / surveyor, was an item that was recommended by the municipal efficiency report. The consultant pointed to a number of items why they thought this was needed. First and foremost, to create a line of succession in the engineering department. In the event there's a vacancy, there are so many important functions going on in that office that to have a licensed engineer ready to step in is critical. The report also pointed to the possibility that a great deal of this position could be funded through escrows, meaning work related to development that developers pay for. The other items that we would have, we would ask this individual to focus on is helping us manage this an increasing problem in the area of managing buffer areas, transition areas. And that is a subject for a future discussion. In addition, the assistant engineer could help out on capital projects and inspections in the field. This is where I think we can maybe take a break for the benefit of the residents here for the dredging study, because the two DPW laborers we were proposing were not included in the municipal efficiency plan, but I don't believe the consultant got into that level of capital analysis, where I think you have some interesting choices to make. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Nunziato to go over his report.
Yeah, Mr. Nunziato, for the benefit of the public, if you could summarize, you gave us a very detailed report. If you could, for the benefit of those that haven't seen it, give them the updated or consolidated summary of what you've done and where we are to date, please.
Okay. Just as a background, the dredging of Aldrich Lake was something that was proposed back in the late 90s. We had done Echo Lake 1997, 1998, and Aldrich Lake was the next lake that was slated to be dredged. We acquired a state grant in 2000, another one in 2001, for a total of $275,000. Based on that, we had gone out and we had tried to design a route, and as most of you people do live near the area, Aldrich Lake is a difficult lake to dredge. It's roughly 7.7 acres of water surface, and access is a problem. There's one or two easements along Bach Boulevard or adjacent to, let's say, 2 residential houses, where we have several thousand feet, about 4,000 feet, through the archery range, through a sewer easement to get to the lake. So it's not as simple as Aldrich Lake, where the lake is right off the road and you can simply access it. Nonetheless, we had pursued several vendors and asked, we went out to RFPs, proposals, to see if we could get this lake dredged. One of the first and foremost things people had asked for is, gee, we need soil tests. We need to know what's in the lake. Is it contaminated material? Is it, what is the makeup, the composition of the dredge spoils? We got in there, we did some soil testing. We found out that it was a sandy material on the bottom and just sediment and silt on the top. It was clean, it was not contaminated, it didn't have any kind of heavy metals or anything like that in it. That being said, we had looked for a way to actually dredge it. We were not able to get somebody to just come in and build a whole road and take it out, because it was a long route and it was not cost efficient. What we wound up doing is we had a deal with a mining operation where they were interested in actually taking the material. They would provide equipment, their own trucks, and we would allow them to just dig the material out, let it dewater, take it away. They own the material. It's their commodity, so to speak. And we had one vendor in 2003 that expressed an interest in doing that. Unfortunately, the president and CEO of the company passed away in 2004, and with that, again, the Aldrich Lake project went on hold. We had looked into down in, say, Belmar and some of the golf courses. They actually have a barge that comes in and it floats on the top and it actually vacuums, so to speak, the bottom of the lake. We had pursued that line of dredging. We had done that in 2005. We had a couple of vendors come in, and we actually went out to bid in October of 2005 for the first time. Like I said, we had $275,000 in the coffers to do this project. First bid came out at $690,000, which was more than double what we had in the coffers. We looked at the itemization line by line of that bid, and there was about $200,000 to actually create a staging area. Again, you have a barge and you're pumping this material, water and muck, several thousand feet to a staging area. You build a big a basin, and you let the stuff fill up and dewaters out, and the sediment settles in. Using Township, DPW, labor, and equipment, we were able to build this containment area, which would be adequate in size and volume to accommodate the lake. We went out to bid again in December of 2005, and the low bid at this point was $474,000. So we saved $220,000 or thereabouts, but again, we were still about $200,000 short of funding a contract to dredge the lake. That being said, we now pursued equipment. Mr. Filiatro and ourselves had pursued with the state, could we use this grant money to acquire equipment? The state had went back and forth, and they had very recently said, yes, you can. However, at this point, this is the last extension of time. They want this grant to be used and applied in 2006. That being said, we had a manufacturer come in who's been in the dredging industry for 100 years. I mean, they are all over the world. They came in, they selected a product that we could use for not only Aldrich Lake, but Lake Louise, Echo Lake, and Sparrow Lake. Right now, again, Aldrich Lake is 7.7 acres. We have a total of about 26.6 acres, or almost 4 times the amount of area still to dredge. The equipment that in your proposals, and for the benefit of the public, the equipment includes a barge, pump, pipes, and there's several incidental pieces of equipment with it, to the tune of about $532,000. In addition to that, we had factored in, at the request of Councilwoman Showmaker, had asked us to consider pretty much everything. Again, the cost of fuel, the cost of maintenance, the cost of labor, and again, it's all included in the report that I had furnished to you. And basically, to do this lake would be roughly $45,000 to $50,000 in fuel costs. And again, we had assumed 2 DPW laborers. And again, we put the whole year's salary in, which would be $70,000 for 2 of them. We anticipate it would take them roughly 6 months to do the project. So for half a year, they could be put into the labor pool anywhere else in the township. Some of the other factors, when we had actually took DPW's labor and equipment and built this 4-acre containment area for Aldrich Lake, which right now actually is there in place and ready to go. We took out 300 loads of topsoil and fill material to create this area, which we would normally pay about $200 a load for. So that's $60,000 we had saved in not purchasing it from a vendor. We actually had it on site. We were able to use it in some of our other projects. Similarly to that, 65,000 cubic yards is the volume of material that's going to come out of Aldrich Lake. And a typical value for that material would be anywhere from, say, $5 to $10 a yard. So again, we would have somewhere in the neighborhood of $300,000 to $600,000 worth of material. If we had to buy it, now it would be on hand, it would be in our possession. If you were to now move forward and look at, say, Lake Louise, which is 10.8 acres, or Echo Lake, which is 5.4, or Sparrow, which is 2.7, the cost savings now, once you put the $532,000 of equipment and you've already paid for it. Now all you're paying for is the labor and the material and the fuel and the maintenance, which is roughly $8,500 per acre of lake. Where if we look at Aldrich Lake, which again in 2005 prices, it was $690,000 for 7.7 acres of surface area, or about $82,000 an acre. So it's almost a factor of 10. When all is said and done, if we were to buy this equipment and somewhere down the line do Lake Louise, do Echo Lake, and do Aldrich Lake, and Sparrow Lake, it would be roughly a $2 million savings versus the cost of going out to bid. That being said, that is pretty much a summary of my 12-page report.
Okay. Bill, just to focus just a little bit, what is the latest, how much is the grant?
We actually have two grants. One is $100,000, one is $175,000, so $275 total.
And these can be applied to any of the lakes?
Right now, they are specifically, I believe, Mr. Filatro, for Aldrich Lake.
Specifically for Aldrich Lake. How much was the most recent lowest bid?
$474,000.
So how much would the capital budget need to supplement?
Well, again, that bid was December. Now we're
Right.
6 months down the road. I would suspect it would be more, but say $200,000 minimum
Okay, to get Aldrich Lake done.
to get Aldrich Lake done by a contractor, correct?
Okay, what is the status of the other lakes in terms of need for dredging?
Well, right now, Sparrow Lake, again, is the water supply for Parkside, Deerwood Park. The irrigation system is hooked into that. Lake Louise, we had just acquired in trust for public land. That is a pretty well eutrophied lake. It will need to be dredged in the near future if we want to enjoy it in some recreational capacity. And again, Echo Lake is the best of the best at this point because we just did it almost 10 years ago, so it's not as bad as the other three.
Okay. Bill, the municipal efficiency study didn't talk about additional laborers in public works. Is there an ability to use existing personnel? The report didn't get into that detail in that department. It dealt more of projects. So in your opinion, is there personnel available in public works if we didn't hire these two that I included in the proposal?
Well, again, it's just a matter of prioritization. I mean, we would have capable people on staff, yes, but you would now be taking them, again, away from their normal daily duties, and you're spreading people that are already spread thin, even thinner.
Okay. Bill, this piece of equipment, after the three lakes are done, how often do they have to be redone?
Well, now you're on a maintenance type of program, and you could do it, once a year if you chose to. Another thing we had considered possibly is a cooperative agreement or interlocal agreement with other towns, smaller towns that may have bodies of water that need this type of service. But typically, you could do the lake once a year, every other year, perhaps.
When was the last time the lake was done?
When it was
Never.
built, it was never done.
It was never done. So really, how often does it need to be done?
Well, again, that's probably more of a lake restoration committee question, but it all depends on the flows. I mean, you could do a settling basin every year.
Okay. I know the governing body is reluctant to hire additional personnel for good reason. The only other item I would ask you to bear in mind is that once Freewood Acres Park is completed, once Bonham Park is completed, I think we are going to need these additional personnel to maintain this land. So the thing that I'd like you to think about is a possibility of taking these people, putting them on this equipment, and then we'd be able to. We do have work for them down the road. Alternatively, in the alternative, and this is a very realistic option, we can continue to apply for grants, specifically to dredge the lakes, and supplement the difference and utilize the private sector. So very clearly, it's a policy decision for council to make. And really, I think those are your options with respect to this item.
And these, I just want to be clear on this, the two, if we look at the two DPW laborers, that 34,000 is just salaries.
Just salaries and
So-
just for half.
That's a half a year.
And it's only a half a year. So if we were to truly take that up, well, it's double, but we probably need to multiply that by a factor of about 2.2 to account for benefits and all of the other expenses that go into it. So we're talking about $100,000 in added expense in staffing. And how quickly would this be dredged?
Well, the equipment itself is not something you could just go to a dealer and buy. It would have to be ordered. So certainly, we would not be able to get delivery on the equipment until possibly end of the year. But one thing that we do need to be practical and realistic about is if we do not close out these grants in 2006, we're going to have to return them. And basically, the money goes away.
Why aren't we just taking those grant monies, regardless, they have to be dredged? So how we go about dredging them, whether we hire two people, we subcontract two people, the council and I go out there with buckets and shovels to add a little levity to it, but, I mean, regardless, we've got to use that money. So why don't we just say, send us the money?
We already have it.
Okay, so we have
The
it.
money.
Okay,
So the point is, we need to spend
We
it.
need to spend it, we need to spend it in accordance with their spending plan, which we did have modified for equipment, or we need to send it back. And
Oh.
they've been,
Let me just, clarify the picture. The difference between the lowest bid and what we expect to expend on it is in the capital budget. And that difference can either be used to subcontract it out, or we can use the grant and that difference to buy the equipment.
Right.
If you choose that option, then the feeling is that you're going to need personnel to man it. But you will now be in a position to do other projects.
Mayor, I understand your concern, but on the other hand, I don't want you to forget that, and I find it hard to believe it's already been 10 years. It seems like we've been dredging Aldridge Lake forever. And we're going to go to Lake Louise, and then from Lake, we are constantly going to be faced with
Correct.
in this
I certainly don't
situation.
forget it. I just want to make sure that we have to remember that the people who pay the bills around here are the ones that bear this expense. And so I want to exhaust every remedy before we ask the taxpayers to hire more people. Private sector isn't hiring more people, and I just want to, I'm certain the management team has done this, I just want to make sure there isn't any other option before we start adding jobs, because we just saw that we're paying $473,000 in pension contributions, $50,000 in FICA. I mean, the numbers are staggering, and because of the situation the state is in and their reluctance to address the pension problem, every time we add a couple, two people, it might not on the surface seem like it's a big deal, but you know what? Our children and our grandchildren, 10, 15, and 25 years from now, with these pension obligations, are not going to be able to pay it. So that's my concern before we go adding people on board. Can we add them on as part-timers so that they're not eligible for medical benefits? And maybe we add on 4 part-timers
I
instead
kind of
of 3
agree with Cynthia that
full-timers?
you're overlooking the fact that we're realizing, you call it soft savings, but there's a $2 million savings number here. And if you're equating $100,000 a year as the cost, this one purchase of the equipment and doing all 4 lakes continuously pays for 20 years of those 2 guys.
I don't disagree. My only point is, can we do it by spreading it out? Can we hire 4 part-timers, which would be the equivalent of 2 full-timers? This way they're not eligible for health benefits, and they're not eligible for many of the other fringe benefits that come along with the equation that are going to take that number up year over year over year over year. I don't disagree we need to do it. I just want to find the most fiscally responsible way to do it.
Well, I would then ask Bill, is it more beneficial to DPW to have 2 full-timers who will be used seasonally in different areas, and then to have 4 part-timers who might not be as trained as well?
2 comments. First off, if we were to purchase the equipment, I don't expect we would be able to see it until the end of the year. So the laborers would not necessarily have to be hired until the equipment came in. Okay, that's first. Secondly, I wouldn't want to hire 2 brand-new, entry-level laborers and put them in the machine. We would put them into the workforce and take 2 experienced workers and have them work on the barge or the dredge. So you're really just taking 2 bodies out of the current force and replacing them with 2 new hires. And I would not use part-timers. I would think they would have to be full-timers.
Why would they have to be full-timers?
Well,
If we're using the 2 experienced guys to drive the dredge, why couldn't we supplement with part-timers on the back end for general laborer type work?
well, honestly, it's not something I've considered until you just brought it up. But just from a practical standpoint, if we had 2 full-timers coming out of the regular duties to do that, I mean, it just sounded logical. But we could look into it. I have to reserve that comment for now.
I think I would like to give that more analysis, and we'll do that.
So it sounds like if we make the capital commitment, which we have to buy the equipment to dredge the lakes, we own the property, we're not going to need to add the laborers until next year anyway, because we won't have the equipment until then. So does it make sense to leave those numbers in this budget? If we're not going to hire them, why would we allocate the funds?
Well, instead of being 348 required, according to what Bill did on page 7 here, it would be 278 required. We had 70,000.
Right.
Correct.
Is that a fair statement?
If the equipment isn't going to be ready till next year,
Oh, if he orders it, we're the same place he ordered his speed bumps?
No,
Don't worry
please.
about it.
Plus your savings of fuel for
Part
this
of
year.
2009's budget.
Another 46.
Right, plus the savings for fuel that could
So
come
it'd
out
actually
of
only
the...
be 220 extra that we need for this year.
Can I ask a question,
Go
please?
ahead,
Tom?
Councilman.
If we applied for more grants for dredging, could those monies be used to offset those salaries? Or would that money only be able to be used for outside consulting services?
Well, that would really depend on the grant. And,
I'm
you know, I
asking.
don't- you know, without knowing the grant, and of course, we don't know of any grant out there right now that, you know, I don't know if it's the same, similar grant, a legislative initiative grant like these 2 were, probably not. They're usually for either contract work or for equipment purchases. They're not normally for operating expenses such as salaries or benefits or other, you know, normal operating expenses.
Just to clarify, Bill, this grant was not from a special dredging program. It was from the legislative grant program.
That is correct.
Okay, then that's, I know that, Mr. Walsh, the category of grant that this came from cannot be used for personnel, to fund personnel.
For our personnel or consulting personnel?
Right, it cannot be used for municipal employees. It cannot be used to fund operating expenses. It apparently could be used to help acquire the equipment or to hire someone to do the project, but it cannot fund operating expenses in a municipality. Just let me follow up with your question. Bill, are you aware of a dredging grant program out there?
No, I'm not. But again, that is something we could look into, but it still doesn't address the time constraints and the strings that are attached to the current grants in their current format.
Okay, I'm not aware of a specific dredging grant out there either, but we'll look into it.
But I still think long-term, if we do this, long-term, we should strongly consider shared services, because we do have municipalities that are in the same situation as us.
Well, along those lines, could we potentially reach out to the county administrator and actually, really in Ocean and Monmouth, since we border 2 large municipalities in Ocean, but let's find out of the 36 towns in Ocean and 53 in Monmouth, which of them have a situation where they've got bodies of water they're responsible for dredging, and see if we can't come up with a coalition to help pay for equipment, manpower, subcontracting services, and to pursue that. That's not an immediate fix. We have to proceed in allocating the money. The other thing is, as it relates to dredge spoils, I continue to read articles in the mainstream newspapers and in some of the periodicals that we get as elected officials about municipalities that are dealing with port issues and the dredge spoils that are being removed from the bottoms of major bodies of water because the shipping lanes are getting clogged and the boats can't get through the ports and what have you. And there are massive dredging jobs that are constantly taking place One of them is a huge federal project in Pennsylvania. So I'm just wondering if it might not be worth pursuing advertising for a dredge spoils removal project, but rather than do it in our normal means of, we put a bidder out and we advertise it here and put it in the Asbury Park Press, maybe we put it into the periodicals that someone in that business might be in. We put it in the New Jersey magazine that we all get as elected officials, and we really go out and see what other entities are there, because from my understanding, it's a pretty considerable business, the reproduction of dredge spoils that get used for other purposes. So I happen to think that was a creative solution at the time, and I think if we expanded the scope, we may find out that more people are interested if they were aware of it. Some contractor in Hudson County or in Atlantic County might not be aware we had that project here, and if we broaden the scope, we may find some more interested bidders, I think.
Man, I was here, there were 7 bidders from all over the state. Just so you know, there was,
Well, he said there was only one.
no, that was the lowest bid. There were like 7 or 8 bidders here that day, correct?
The one bidder was a gentleman that was interested in building a haul road, removing the material himself, and trucking it off. This was before, just from a mechanical dredge.
Okay.
The hydraulic dredge, which is where they vacuum the bottom, so to
Right.
speak, we did have seven vendors.
And what happened of those 7? None of them.
Well, unfortunately, mobilization's expensive, the equipment's expensive, it's roughly $10 a yard to remove materials, and you're paying prevailing wage for the labor. So it's roughly 65,000 cubic yards, roughly $10 a yard is 650,000. That's kind of the numbers you're going to have.
And that's what they wanted to charge us?
Correct.
To remove it?
Yes.
And that calculated the money they would get back on a return from reselling it?
Well, at that point, the material would remain on site because it would just dry up and you'd create a plateau.
But wouldn't we look to bid it whereby they would be able to, the money in the dredge soils is when they take the soil.
Right.
So wouldn't we want to bid it in such a way that they would suck it out and take it with them?
Well, that would be mechanical, where you actually have a
Right.
machine and you dig it out, you dewater it, and you take it away.
Yes.
There was nobody interested in doing that.
And how, what was the bid span to find someone to do that?
Well, we wrote 3 different bid specs. We went out to bid actually twice. And the last time around, we did both methods, which would be digging it or pumping it and letting it dry either way. And actually, the lowest bidder was $474,000, which was $200,000 over our budgeted amount.
Do you think, Mr. Chansky, there are other, you've been in other municipalities where this dredge spoils becomes a big, is there anyone else out there that if we expanded the scope, that if they were to remove it, could we pursue that?
Mayor, my only experience with dredging was when I served as a legislative aide, and there were small towns with lakes in way up in Sussex County. So really, my only thought with respect to innovative sort of contracting is I just know there are a lot of small towns out there who might benefit from an interlocal government services agreement with us to help them out, to borrow our equipment or what have you. So it's a potential cost center. With respect to dredging materials, I really don't have any background in that area.
Let me just add one more factor. Okay, 65,000 yards was the target number for Aldrich Lake. And a typical tandem, an 18-yard tandem, loaded with dredge material, dried material at this point, you're talking over 3,600 trucks coming out of Bass Place. So that is going to significantly affect our road infrastructure as well, too. I have a fully loaded tandem.
So it sounds like we don't need to put the laborers in this year because the equipment won't be here till the end of the year. What's the pleasure of the council regarding the capital expense to buy the equipment?
Right. You're correct, Mayor. I'm sorry to
It's okay.
recap, but just so we understand, I listed this just to remind myself that you have
Right.
a decision to make with respect to either contracting or purchasing. And you needed to know the long-term impact.
So the issue is next year, we're going to have to hire 2 people, and it would be at double that number, plus pension,
Yes.
health benefits, et cetera, et cetera.
And as long as council's aware that this need may come up, I'm comfortable with that because we are, one, in the midst of hiring a new DPW director, so I was a little reluctant to propose additional help without an analysis of a new department head as to what's needed and what's not, and utilizing their expertise. And 2, the additional recreational fields where we might alternatively put those personnel are not coming online immediately either. So I'm comfortable with that, but I wanted the council to make sure you understood that if you purchased it, there's a benefit, but once you've purchased it, there's an expense.
What is the expense, what's the capital number again? I mean, obviously, we're only putting the down payment down, but
In the capital portion of the budget, we included $230,000, which would supplement the grant, and that could have been used for either the dredging or the acquisition of the project, of the equipment.
so that's a $11,500 down payment that we need to put up, which is 5% of the 230.
Yes, sir.
And then we would be bonding for the balance over, is this a
A 15-year.
15 years.
over a 15-year? Okay, so on this point, let's just tackle this one item. These fine residents have been patient and have listened to this. What's the pleasure of the council on bonding for $230,000 piece of dredging equipment, which is about $11,500 in a down payment to this year's budget? Mr. Walsh, we'll start with you.
I would like to see us purchase the equipment, being as we have 4 lakes. Not that we have to do them every year, but I'm sure with every 5 to 7 years, it would be a good thing to do, plus the opportunity for shared services with some other towns in the area, which could help offset the cost.
Okay, Mrs. Showmaker, you agree?
I agree to that, and
Okay.
I also want us to keep in mind, with Lake Louise, Sparrow Lake, and Echo Lakes altogether, it's going to be a cost savings of $1.4 million overall. And I think we've all worked very hard to continue the maintenance program in the township, and not to exclude that these lakes are an ongoing project.
Mr. Malave?
I agree with the purchase of the equipment. I do have a couple of quick questions for Mr. Nanciar. Bill,
Go
what is the life expectancy of the lifespan expectancy of this equipment?
Well, the barge itself, or the dredge itself, has parts, basically the cutter head and some of the other parts which would need to be occasionally rebuilt. As far as regular maintenance, I mean, they actually go by hours on the motor, and they accrue $1.50 an hour for a pump and $2 for the barge. But other than, the typical maintenance, it's similar to like our tub grinder, the moving parts that are constantly in contact with the lake materials are the ones that you would have to replace on an as-needed basis.
So we will be able to handle the maintenance, the ongoing maintenance of this piece of equipment?
Well,
In-house.
for all
In-house.
intents and purposes, it is, a machine, just like a generator or a car motor. It's just an engine with a cutter attached to it.
Now, this barge is going to be transported from lake to lake, obviously. We need some sort of trailer or something to
No, this
to
actually,
transport this?
well, actually, it would require a crane to move it.
So we would have to go out and rent a crane every time.
Correct.
At what cost?
It's about $500 each way.
Okay. And storing the equipment obviously would not be a problem because it would just stay by the lakes, I would imagine?
We haven't really considered where we would put that yet. Whether it
But
would,
it's not something that would need to go indoors or anything like that, obviously.
no.
It could surely get wet, so I don't think it can stay outside.
Well, that's my point. I mean,
It better be able to get wet.
well, I think it makes a lot of sense if we go out and do this. I know I asked you, some of the residents had brought this up obviously before. I remember being here for the tree lighting ceremony, and one of the residents approached me and asked me about this, and I called you at the time, and you told me about the problem with the monies and this and that. And I even, not the engineer that I am, I asked you if it was possible to dredge half of the lake with the monies that we had, and you stated that it didn't make sense to do that at the time. So I'm all in favor. I think over the long haul savings to the township, it's significant. If we do buy the piece of equipment, I would still pursue the fact, as the mayor stated, in others to go and see if other townships could utilize this piece of equipment, obviously at a fee. And also, I would still cling on to any grants that may be available out there in addition to what we already have. So, but I'm in agreement to go ahead and purchase this piece of equipment. It makes sense to me.
Deputy Mayor Tabasco, you have any comments?
Yeah, the other council members have pretty much recapped everything I was going to say, but I'll just say that I first started sitting on the Recreation Advisory Committee in '99. It's already 2006, so this has been an ongoing problem for 7 or 8 years already, so it's time to put it to bed. For all the reasons the other council members already mentioned, I think it makes great economic sense to actually buy the equipment and do this in-house. I see the need for these 2 additional DPW hires that Tom has brought up outside of even this dredging project with the other parks coming online very soon, so I'm all for this.
The only comments I'll make is that I agree from a cost perspective, purchasing it is the smarter decision at this point. We definitely need to make certain that we follow up and pursue on a regional alliance with other municipalities. Maybe they lease it from us when it's not in active use. It could be that simple, as long as we're doing everything we can to throw as much resources at it to reduce the tax burden. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, because we're not going to have to deal with that employee issue next year, or I'm sorry, until next year. So we just got to make sure we take that out of whatever these proposed O&E numbers are, in addition to the fuel expenses and any of the other miscellaneous items that were in the remaining 6 months of this budget, because we need to find every penny we can. And I don't want to prejudge needing the 2 individuals next year, is not to create an expectation, because to your point, there will be obviously a new director in the DPW, and there may be other things that you do in your sort of overall assessment of the town between now and the end of the year that maybe the same time next year, through increased efficiencies or productivity, maybe we won't need to add the 2 on. So I'm always very reluctant to do adds to staff. And
Wishful thinking, maybe.
it is wishful thinking,
very
but just being mindful of who pays the bills.
I do have another question, Bill. You mentioned that the money's needed to be, the grants money needs to be spent this year. So we could utilize that money perhaps for a down payment and so forth, in case we don't actually receive the piece of equipment until '07. Or once we have a purchase contract out there, would the state assume that the money's been spent?
As long as we have a purchase contract, I think the state would even they've been more than accommodating to us. I think if we were taking bids and hadn't actually awarded bids or anything, I think they would work with us.
Okay.
All right, so it sounds as if, Mr. Trunetsky, you have your direction, $230,000 to buy the dredging equipment. We'll put it out to bid as quickly as possible. We'll pursue other towns to share in the cost. We don't need to hire the people this year. We expect to have the equipment by the end of this year. And then, just for the benefit of these residents, you get the equipment in, say, December, January. When would the actual dredging begin? And let's put aside that let's, for a moment, suspect we have the manpower to do it, obviously. So when to set the expectation for these people, when would that hit the water?
Okay. From a signed contract, 21 to 23 weeks, we accept delivery of the equipment. Once we mobilize it and get it on site, the good thing about this barge or this type of process, if you were to take the lake and you had to drain the lake, you have the time frames, you go November to March, lake lowering permits, because once March or April 15th hits, you have the spawning season, you have to raise the lakes back up. This can be done any time during the year, because you have a full lake at all times. So whenever our labor schedule dictated we could do it, there are no time constraints.
There
with
are any
any permit.
temperature constraints if the top of the water is frozen?
Ice built up or anything?
None. So theoretically, if you had the equipment in December and you needed to have it calibrated and fine-tuned and craned out there in January, earliest case scenario, the machine could be on the water getting it cleaned out. Is that fair?
As long as we had a block of time to do it, yes. There are no seasonal
Okay.
concerns with this type of.
All right, so we've made the commitment. If anyone here from the public would still, I mean, hopefully we've answered questions and given commitments on what's going to happen. If anyone who is here from the public would like to come up on this particular, the Aldridge dredging, then you're certainly welcome to do so.
We heard more in the last hour.
Why don't you come on up? You're okay, okay. You wanted to, Mr. Libria, on the dredging issue? Good, okay. Yes, sir, Mr. Libria, welcome. If you wouldn't mind, just give us your name and address, please, for the record.
John Librio, 35 Starlight Road.
Hi, Mr. Libria.
As the discussion was going on about this, something came to mind. Yes, it's all well and good. This equipment sounds great that we're going to purchase and hopefully do it in-house with laborers. 2 questions. Number 1, we were talking about if we purchase this equipment and getting the money back from this, paying for this by leasing it to other county municipalities. Has anyone looked into if any of these municipalities have this equipment that we could lease from them?
Yeah, we have.
We have, actually. We even asked the county. The county at one time did have a mudcat, which is what we want, and they no longer have it.
Oh, okay, that's
We
what
did.
came to mind.
Yeah.
And number two, I mean, as far as the laborers, hiring the laborers, the only reason I bring this up is because of what happened the last time with the budget, where unfortunately, we had to, in order to stabilize the budget a little bit, do some layoffs of laborers. Is there any anticipation that it's a possibility this time around?
No.
Okay, so then, that's it, good.
Good, thanks, Mr.
Thank
Lubrio.
you.
All right, folks, we hope we've satisfied your questions. You're more than welcome to stay for the balance of this discussion.
It'll be fun.
If you have any ideas of how we could bring this tax rate down, then come on up. We'll get back to the regular portion.
Thank
All
you
right,
all for coming.
Yeah, thank you, folks. We appreciate your taking the time, and we hope this satisfied your concern. Why don't we take
Yeah,
a
1 minute
5-minute recess and let everybody take their time clearing out. All right, I'm going to call the meeting back to order. Mr. Chernietsky, we're going to turn it back over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks.
I'm going to come back to this slide.
Hey, Mr. Rucuglio, would you mind shutting the door behind you, Morrow? Would you just shut the door behind you?
Same to you, John.
Mr. O'Connell, would you mind shutting that door to your side, please? Thank you very much. Go ahead, Mr. Chernietsky.
Okay, I have to come back to this slide. I have to go to the next one because it's telling about the rest of these employees. I listed the 2 traffic safety officers because that was a discussion that I understand was held prior to me coming on board. And in our various discussions, it wasn't eliminated or removed, and I don't know if that was because we just never revisited police. It was something that was done early on. Honestly, I have not had an opportunity to investigate in detail the manpower needs of that department in comparison to the other needs. So, I'm going to look for your guidance here and your experience. Now, let me just show you the next slide.
Skip one.
Okay. The municipal efficiency report suggested that there is a need for additional personnel, additional staff personnel in the construction code office, in the engineering department, in the land use and code enforcement section, right in general, in the land use and code enforcement section, in the finance office, specifically in the MIS department, with respect to the township's ambitious cable TV plans.
Other technology plans, too.
And technology plans. And then in the manager's office, there was a discussion about a deputy manager. I would tell you that there are many, let me start with the deputy manager. There are many municipalities under our form of government that are much smaller that have a deputy manager. It is something that I believe we need, but it's also something I believe we can fund through existing resources, through consolidating of certain positions. So that's not reflected in the budget, but council made the investment in this municipal efficiency report, and I am going through it item by item, and I'm following that guidance. It's an investment that shouldn't be abandoned. Now, it's not infallible, but it has some really good ideas, and I'm sticking to them as sort of a blueprint. The number one recommendation was a deputy manager that's being handled but within budget. Now, in using my discretion in terms of what I think is important, so much of what we do lands in the engineering department. And, recently Bill was out of the office, and it became so clear to me how, what great value he is to us. There are many projects that land on his desk. In addition, he oversees the Department of Public Works. He's the official department head there. So, in looking at office space needs in a lot of these other areas as well, and considering my own experience here in a period of 2.5 months, my conclusion was of all that's recommended here, I would opt to recommend an assistant township engineer. But, so I'm going to go back, and I'm going to ask Bill to respond to the study, explain what his needs are, but also, he's in an awkward position because he has to deal with these two laborers also. So he might have to pick and choose. So just, what do you think?
Pick wisely, William.
Gee, pick and choose. I didn't know that was an option. In all fairness, due to the fact that, we are considering a director of public works at this point, or will be in the near future, certainly the assistant engineer is something that I haven't had in 7 years. It is sorely needed, and I would certainly say, at least from my point of view, that would be, if I had to select, I would say that would be the way to go. However, I would prefer to, let's say, leave it in at this point, but I would like to look at it from the perspective of when we do work on this Public Works Director, that we perhaps look at it from that perspective, and maybe more globally, take a look at it from that perspective. I mean, certainly I don't want to discount that now we can get away with, another couple of months or another year without an assistant. I mean, certainly that would be something I'd prefer to do. But I would also like to look at it globally with, a Public Works Director candidate, so we could see what maybe qualities we may not need, or maybe we would need in this person.
How many?
If that makes any sense.
So, Mr. Nunziata, you're saying that if you had to pick between the two laborers, which are really off the table for all intent and purposes because we don't specifically need them because of the dredging situation until next year, but if you had to prioritize, you're saying that we'd get more value out of an assistant engineer and surveyor than we would anything else, and that would give us the best return on our investment, short and long term?
One word answer.
It would give the engineering department certainly a little bit of breathing room. However, as far as Public Works is concerned, absolutely two laborers, I mean, no question that's necessary too. However, again, it would be something I would prefer to discuss with the new Public Works person coming on board, so that we could collectively do what's best for.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is proceed as orderly as possible, with things like this. Council, you have a report that suggests there are a variety of positions that need to be filled. It was my opinion that it's the assistant engineer is the priority at this point.
Which is, Tom? I'm sorry.
The assistant engineer would be a priority at this point. You heard from the engineer of the town that it is something that's needed. Quite often, the discussions I've heard over the past few months are putting council in a position to decide whether something is needed or not needed. And what I would like to do with my tenure as township manager is bring you the options and make them as clear as possible. So now you're faced with the policy choice. I hope that we've presented to you the need for it. Your decision now is whether we're able to fund it or not. And hopefully we've eliminated through the study and through thoughtful analysis whether it's absolutely required. I think in this case it is a required next step. Whether you think now is the time to do it is up to you.
I'll ask a question, if
Go
that's
ahead,
okay. To what depth did that study go out of the box and think about just blowing up the whole process and creating a different process, whether it be...
You must have read my mind. I
Go
just wrote
ahead.
it down. I mean,
So you know where I'm going with this. And we could do it the way we've currently been doing it, we need additional manpower, or we can do it a different way, and maybe not,
Right,
if you're following my thought.
Right,
So
you're saying
I
a lot of communities contract out services through private
Just to give you an
engineering
example, in the
firms.
past, with regards to inspections, we've had different engineering firms come to us in the past and say, hey, we do that.
Right.
And we've always, at that time, felt, let's keep our people, but not necessarily not that we would do anything, but at least to get the analysis on it to see where it plays.
Right.
It didn't really go into that depth, is what I'm getting at.
Let me draw a distinction between inspection services and a department head.
I was just using it as one
Yeah.
example of
No,
something that was talked
right, and
about.
that's true, and
Right.
I understand that, and I worked in that particular field as well.
Mhm.
Yes, private engineering companies do a great job at doing inspections, no doubt. But I guess that's not the policy discussion we're having now. Right now, we're talking about implementing, well, you can talk about whatever you want, but we're talking about the emergency management, the efficiency study.
Mhm.
And it gets to the idea of a department head. In this case, the department head oversees approximately 10, how many people do we have?
More than that, yeah.
Okay. 10 people plus the Department of Public Works.
Right.
The process of the sheer volume of issues that come into that department, you need someone there present every day to prepare bid specifications for
Mhm.
roads and to answer residents' questions and complaints, and there are tons of complaints, to sort of supervise the Department of Public Works. So in a large town like that, like this, even if we were to completely ask the private sector to handle the inspection work, and I'm not ready to recommend that just yet.
And neither am I, to
would-
be honest with you. I just want to know if it was
yeah,
an
I would still
analyzed.
make the argument that we need an assistant engineer.
Okay.
All right, just the quick number that I did was if we took half the number and we doubled it, obviously, and looked at it from a total budget perspective, and we added to that at least $10,000 in medical benefits, and then we have to take that up to some other factor to account for the FICA obligations, pension payments, et cetera, we're looking at about $110,000 to $120,000, which is the annual amortized cost of adding that person on. And I appreciate management's recommendation, by all means. I want to make certain, we put on our role of, we're members of the board of director for a $40 million plus company, and there's a presentation to add high-level executive to the tune of $120,000 a year. I just want to make sure we're going through a methodical process of doing the pros and cons about that add to staff and its immediate impact on what short-term improvements will we realize vis-a-vis services to our customers, and what will the long-term ROI be with respect to what we anticipate getting productivity-wise and all those kinds of things. And I say that both as a statement and as sort of a rhetorical question, and I'd be interested in your comments.
Sure. We would be a couple things. One is, not to put, Bill, I apologize, I don't want to embarrass you, but we get a lot of calls that only Mr. Nunziato can respond to. And he is often in the field dealing with projects. So that is an immediate issue. Also recognize that what we're requesting is a surveyor here. So expense, yes, I hesitate to say this, but it would almost be the reverse of where council is going. Things that are privatized, we would be able to do in-house at a considerable savings. And any work that the assistant engineer does in terms of inspecting sites can be billed to escrow accounts, so that position can be funded through that as well. Other areas, and I wanted to raise this because it's coming up more and more. We have a serious issue with respect to managing our buffer areas, where people clear buffer areas and what have you. It's important, and the way we deal with that now is we have a part-time person, Mr. Panic, who we keep, but he's part-time. He's a certified tree expert. My suggestion would be that this individual also become a certified tree expert.
Okay.
Here's the issue with buffer areas. It's not a zoning enforcement matter. It's a property rights matter. It's almost as if someone has a basket of fruit, and we either acquired or purchased or were given an apple, and the residents who live on that piece of property say, gee, I'd like to take a bite of that apple, and we lack the resources to manage that. that is a growing problem, and I see it growing. So I would ask this, and so it has to be negotiated almost on a case-by-case basis. This individual would be trained in that area as well. So, again, in-house surveying, inspections that can be built to escrow, and dealing with these buffer areas, and then providing some sort of succession in that department in terms of executive leadership.
Well, for all those reasons,
All right.
I'm okay with it.
So, Mr. Malavi, we'll start with you this time. The question on the table is to add this, in light of all the testimony we've heard, do we hire an assistant to Mr. Nunziato at a tune of about $120,000 a year over 12 months?
Bill, did I misunderstand you that when you said that perhaps let's wait until a DPW director is hired or at least being searched for so that, were your intentions perhaps was to maybe combine the position?
No, what I had wanted to do is have their input as to maybe what some needs that they may have or gaps, similar to the buffer services that Mr. Chernetsky
So
was
the possibility
referring
of
to.
combining the positions is really not doable. That's not something that would be appropriate.
I don't think it's likely that a candidate would have all those,
Right, credentials
right.
or qualifications.
But not impossible. But not impossible, 'cause
Well, I'm just saying, I mean, if you're going to hire obviously you're in charge now of DPW, so the department's under you, and you're looking for an assistant engineer. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if the possibility of that person, if you get somebody obviously at a different level with other qualifications, perhaps that person could assist you in some of the surveying and so forth.
Sure, absolutely.
While directing the department of DPW as well. I mean, I'm just throwing it out there as a
Well,
possibility. Realizing that obviously you may have to bring up the salary slightly higher or whatever to accommodate those qualifications. But it'll probably be at a cost savings to then, rather than hiring two different people.
I don't think the intent is to try to find a public works director that's got surveying experience that
Okay.
can do both.
All right, fine. I was just trying that being said, I've also obviously read the report, and I'm also in agreement that perhaps we do need an assistant in that department. I know Bill's been asking for since I've been sitting up here, I know, 3 years, for an assistant. Again, somebody of those qualifications, unfortunately, is not going to come inexpensively into the town. I think the $120,000 that the mayor's throwing out there, it's probably on the high side. It could probably possibly be a little less, not much less, but it is what it is. I mean, I think that if we're going to be able to service the people, unfortunately, we're going to need to hire some more people at some times. And this may be the one case where we may need to hire the additional person in that department. So I would be, right now, I'm leaning towards it. Especially this year's when, we're going to take the 2 laborers off, since they're not going to be needed until next year. So whoever's sitting up here will have to deal with that next year. Obviously, it won't be me. But in any event, I'm in favor. I'm leaning
Okay.
towards yes. I think that he does need the assistant in that department.
All right, Mr. DeBasco, you had comments?
Yes, with regards to the actual cost per year, 120, as Juan said, maybe a little high. I estimate it's probably about 105, but that's neither here nor there. It's still extra money, so I understand your concern. However, I do think, based on the testimony from Tom, our manager here, and what's in the efficiency audit, that we do need this person. So having said that, I will say that, we're a policy board, and I'd rather not get into micromanaging what our people are telling us to do. I'd rather create policy and enable them to come to us with their recommendations as they're doing, and then follow along. They're involved in the day-to-day. So we have both Tom and Bill telling us this is an outright need. So I'm all in favor of having this assistant come on board. Now, with regards to the DPW, what I will say about that, in brief, is that when I saw that chart before, there are 50 people in that department, And we are bringing on somebody new to be the department manager. And just like we brought Tom on and have given him the free hand to kind of do as he sees fits to best run the town, I would be of the mind to let whoever Tom hires as a DPW manager have sort of a free hand as well to run that department. So that department could get completely blown up and restructured for all we know at some point, and then we'll be talking about much different things with regards to that department at a later date. So I'm trying to leave that separate from this engineering need, which we know is a definite need. So I'm all in favor of the assistant.
Okay, Mr. Walsh.
Being a private business owner, I use as a multiplier most of the time for my employees. They cost me about 1.3 their salary. I understand in government it could be more. 1.3 times the 75,000 salary would have been 97.5. 1.6 times the $75,000 salary would have been 120. I would just like, and I'm okay. I'm okay, Mayor, but I would just like to know for future references also, when I have to figure out how much things are going to cost us per employee. Jeffrey, is there something that you could get me that gives me an approximate of where I should be figuring when we add employees?
What's the fact? In fact, I use 1.4, Bob, just to...
Yeah, but I mean, I'm just...
Mr. Walsh?
There has to be a factor.
I apologize. I should have included something more comprehensive. We were so focused on the actual tax impact, getting it down to a precise figure as much as possible. I neglected to do that. And when I do the introductory presentation, you'll and you'll have a printout. It'll be more comprehensive.
Okay. I'll deal with you in private on that, not publicly.
Do you have a general rule of thumb, Mr. Filiatro?
General rule of thumb, 1.4 on a, what I call normal, and a 1.6 on police because their pension is...
1.6 police,
their
1.4
pension is much higher,
non-police?
yes.
All right.
Because the pension is
Yeah.
higher.
Just
So if you were to net that out, knowing that we've got 113 police on 265, if we were to just try and use a number that's a blended average of the two,
Look at a 1.45, 1.47.
Yeah, 1.4 and a half or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Walsh, go ahead.
Okay.
uh,
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to listen a lot to the professionals here and also to the residents. And it sure does seem that Mr. Nunziata is stretched thin. A lot of people, not saying he's not following up on things, but speaking to him personally at times, you know, he's got a list of things in front of him that he has to do. He's already been ordered to do. And now 3 or 4 more things are being put on top of him. And I do believe somebody needs to be there to answer the questions of the residents and the concerns of the residents. It's a very touchy subject, those buffers and a lot of things that are going on and building in this town. So, you know, based on Tom's recommendation and listening to Ms. Nunziata, I'd be all for. I don't think they'd be asking for it if it wasn't a necessity. I have confidence in that. So,
Okay, Mrs. Showmaker.
I know this is a budget hearing, and this is why we're discussing this position, but in many respects, I agree with Pete on a lot of points that he has made tonight. He must be reading my mind. As a board member, I'm not interested, nor do I want to be involved in micromanaging the departments. One of the things that I feel very strongly is that from listening, just as you get all the calls and the emails, over 5 years, I have had a tremendous amount of calls in a positive and a negative fashion. And one of the things that I always, it's in the back of my mind, are we doing things as business as usual? So I'm going to go from a perspective of where we, as council members, we do, our job is to do things with the policymakers.
Right.
And maybe we need to take a look at the general scope of how that entire area of those departments are being operated or managed or structured, and I don't want, that's not where I don't want to make that decision. It's not what I want to make, but my point is that things have occurred over the course of years because that's been the habit of things.
Right.
Not that it's right or wrong, but maybe with the changing times, it's not working. And like, for instance, Bill does have an abundance of work. Why does he have an abundance of work? Because you yourself said that he's the only one that can answer a question. Why? I mean, is he the only licensed engineer that we have in that department? If that is the case, why has it always been like that? Maybe it needs to be changed, but maybe the structure of that department needs to be changed, or those departments. Maybe everything needs to be mixed up and I'm thinking out of the box, but I
Right.
don't want to micromanage what decision you need to do. And I don't think it's incumbent upon this board, even though we're in a budget hearing, for us to make those kind of decisions. Now,
There's a job that get done, it gets done, let them do it, and we
Right.
enable the, I agree with you 100%.
I want to enable you to make that decision, even,
Okay.
and I know that we're in a budget hearing here, and you're asking permission to add that into it, but adding that position may not, it could be a Band-Aid for cancer. You know, I'm trying to think, I'm trying to cover all of that whole building as a whole. Do you understand where I'm coming from?
I
Tom?
do. I understand that there's a very real concern that costs related to public employees grow exponentially to the cost associated with those in the private sector. And so in choosing from that report what I recommended, bear in mind that I chose a position that I think can be largely funded through escrow accounts.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we can't show that in the budget as a revenue intake because you can't charge to those escrows until the builder calls upon you to come in and inspect. So
Can I
we
make-
can't anticipate that.
Can I make a comment on that? You made that comment before, and what my biggest concern is, I'm not worried about the big guy that's coming in here with, you know, a 785 or 450 housing project or a commercial, but I'm worrying about the little guy that's going to come in here and have a minor subdivision or something that we are going to add additional fees. I mean, because,
Okay.
do you understand? So I'm trying to go both directions in that. I'm going to abstain from my decision on this one because I don't feel that it's as a policymaker, this is a decision that I need to make. I think this is a decision that you need to make.
We have to approve the funds for
Well,
it.
I'm not going to approve the funds until I see, somebody has to show me on that department.
Well, then,
That-
and I'll give you my comments on it, and it sounds as if there are at least 3 members who are in favor of this, and I don't, and Mr. Nunziato knows, I say this all the time, it's business, it's not personal. And I couldn't think more highly of Mr. Nunziato as a professional. I'm of the opinion that the municipality is facing extraordinary financial times, and that while we would like to add in certain departments, I don't think we have the financial wherewithal to do it right now. And while $100,000 or $105,000 or $110,000 on a $40-something million budget doesn't seem like much, I had these 2 fine young couple, 2 seniors that were here for the Aldridge Drake portion, or lake portion, the dredging, and on their way out, they said, please, is there anything you can do? Because we can't afford to live here. We moved here, Mr. Walsh overheard some of the discussion. They moved here from North Jersey, and they can't pay their taxes. So I'm sensitive to the obligation of having to deliver the service and to deliver it at what we like to call a world-class level. At the same time, because of the condition that the state is in and it trickles on down, I just don't believe we are in a position right now to add to staff. And I could be mistaken on this. I'm not trying to look at it short-sightedly. I don't want to micromanage the operation, and I often say our job isn't to run the town, it's to see to it that you run the town well. And I subscribe to that philosophy, but yet when it comes time to having to appropriate the funds, that's where I'd like to have a greater influence. In private industry, when times become difficult and sales are down, the thing that most private companies do is not add to staff. They attempt to find ways to reinvent how they can deliver their services and their product until they get out of what might be a difficult time, until they can increase revenue and come up with new productivities. Can't always do that in the public sector, and I appreciate that. But I just don't believe that we are yet in a position where we should be adding on a management position to the tune of $100,000 and in salaries and benefits, albeit clearly I appreciate the need. What I would ask is that we continue to go through this management report. We look at more restructuring within the organization. I just don't believe we can afford it from a purely financial perspective. And again, this is not, it's difficult to have this discussion in the presence of some of the people that are directly impacted by it, because there is no finer township employee than Mr. Nunziato, and I know he appreciates, where I'm coming from on this. I have to think about that couple that walked out of here pleading with us to find a way to help them afford to continue to live here.
I have some direct comments to what you just brought up. Look, we're in the customer service business, and I've said this many times. If we started from zero today and said, what services do we want to deliver, let's create a budget that does exactly that. And I will tell you that this efficient review mentions services that we are not delivering. All right, so the next time we have this budget meeting, I'm going to bring in the abstracts. I have them all the way back to 1995. I have data all the way back to 1985 as to what the municipal rate has been for the last 21 years. And I started talking about this at the end of last meeting, but I will tell you that we as a town have run very lean.
You're right.
And we've cut out lots of services. And the reason why we have a services crisis in this town and an infrastructure crisis in this town is because we have not allowed our rate to go up even at a cost of living increase rate. So we've cut out lots of things that we're now trying to overcome here as this council. So when people do come up to you in the future, or come up to me in the future and say we have a tax crisis, I started saying this at the last meeting, it's not the council of Howell Township that has been irresponsible and unaccountable for that. It's been the state, it's been not necessarily the county, although the county has let things go up a little bit, and absolutely it's been the schools. It's not been here. So our key point is we're a local government, and there's services that have to be delivered. We want to do them in the most efficient and cost-effective way, but we don't necessarily want to cut out what is services, or what are services that are necessities. We don't want to cut out infrastructure that are necessities. We need to figure out what those necessities are and then create a budget that fits to that. That's why I've always thought we kind of did things backwards. I always say, let's start the government over today and create a budget to that. What do we want?
It sounds like, Mr. Chernetsky, that there is at least a majority to proceed in establishing this position. So I think we've talked about this point enough. It's been great discussion. I think we all are on the same page. We'd love to be able to do it. We just have to deal with some of the other realities. But it sounds like there's at least 3 council members that are going to proceed, and that's how democracy works. So let's move on to the next topic.
You mean a republic?
A republic. Yeah, an indirect democracy. Okay.
It's just us making the policy, not the...
Listen, you weren't here tonight.
Okay, again, some of the questions that were asked for
probably
me to
have.
cover in preparing the budget. How are we doing with respect to our insurance, our medical insurance? In 2005, we spent $2.3 million. In 2006, we spent 1.9, which represents a 14.5% reduction from the prior year.
That is so overwhelming. It is absolutely phenomenal. What a great score on that one.
Okay.
Good.
Enough said on
Just a
that one.
question about that? Were those ones on the bottom, were they not included in the past numbers also?
It wouldn't change the percentage. We simply looked at, because they're spread out in the budget, because they're funded through grants,
Okay.
and it wouldn't affect the percentage, but it would affect the
The
dollar
terms.
figures, yes. So I just wanted to make a note. It occurred to me sort of as a last minute, oh no, I forgot to include the out-of-cap stuff, so I added that note on the bottom.
Just so you know, Mr. Chinesky, now,
Yes.
if you added $1 million to 2005 and 2006, if you added $1 million to each, it would change the percentage, sir.
Right, but it's not that much.
Okay, but it would change the percentage.
Okay, thank you. Here's where I indicated that the state's really handing it to us. This is the O&E budget. I mean, when we show the percentage increase, it's not that we're going on trips and conferences and buying, all sorts of crazy things.
Thanks, Mr. French.
Years back, the state funded us at a rate that included the public employee retirement system. And a few years back, they said, as well as the police and firemen's retirement system, then they told us a few years back that you are now going to fund this at 100% yourself, and we'll do it to you over a number of years. So this is what we're looking at.
Business over from here.
Scary.
I know.
The numbers speak for themselves. And we have more coming next year. You'll be looking at a similar figure next year.
So the total
Fire all of them.
with this 50% of the 4-year and 75%, it looks like the total is about 475,000?
Correct.
My God.
And then another 25% to the police and fire retirement system.
The state, I mean, I don't mean to sound dramatic, the state pension situation is a disaster, and our governor should hang his head in shame that he hasn't had the courage to deal with it after he said he would. He should be ashamed of himself. It's absolutely a disgrace.
So also, Mayor, just to point out, municipal aid, that we would always count, we would always, at least as long as I've been in this business, been able to anticipate a cost of living increase. State aid has remained flat. So when you take into account the pension stuff, state aid is actually being reduced.
Well, actually, it's even worse than that, Mr. Jeanette.
Go ahead.
At the time that the state saw in their wisdom to grant us the pension holidays and tell us we didn't have to pay the pension anymore, they then reduced our state aid equal the amount of payments that we didn't have to make the pension plan. So in fact, the state realized all the savings on not having to make pension payments, not the town.
Is there a
Now
slide
that the bills are coming back, we don't see a corresponding increase in our state aid to replace the money that we lost.
Is there a slide that gives us the total amount of dollars we're getting in state aid?
No, Jeffrey, under the revenue, was that there?
Yeah, it's got to be there.
No, it's not. I don't think it's broken down by state. We're getting $10.3 million in state aid.
We're getting $10,300,000
Right.
10,325.
in state aid as a function of the $40,582.
That's unrestricted state aid, yes.
And what did we get like last year?
$10,318,000. The
10 million, how much? 218?
318.
Oh,
We're getting
318
7,000 more this year.
Yes.
last year.
Getting $7,000 more.
$7,000 more.
I think we should write the governor a letter thanking him.
And how about, do you happen to have what the 04 was, just for the heck of it?
$10,407,000.
Well, you know where that came from, Bob. It's energy receipts.
Jesus.
Unreal.
All right, Mr. Chernetsky, keep going.
Okay, Social Security up approximately.
Before you do that, I just want to make the council aware, we have a hard stop at 11 p.m. So I just want to make everybody aware that we're going to go.
9:30, man.
Well, yeah, if we can get through the balance of a $40 million budget in 15 minutes. Nobody wants us, well, I think realistically, we're not going any later than 11. If we can adjourn sooner, then we'll certainly do that. Go ahead, Mr.
Okay.
Chernetsky.
Social Security, up about $50,000, 3.9%. That's a function of the negotiated contracts.
Right. Same percentage.
What's the dollar amount that it's up?
Approximately 50,000.
3.9%.
Yep.
The technology in this room is...
Lack of.
Would you know the number, the dollar amount of salaries we pay Social Security up to now? Is it up to like 98,000?
Jeffrey, you should have that, right?
I don't think it's 90.
They've been raising it every year.
Yeah, it was 90,000 last year. I think it's 92 something this year. I'm pulling a blank. I am
Okay.
absolutely pulling a blank. It wouldn't have increased. It was $90,000 in 05. It would not have increased $8,000 in 1 year. But I certainly we'll find out, and I'll let you know tomorrow.
Okay, Mayor, that does it for my portion of the operating budget. So if we eliminate all the new hires that were funded for a 6-month period, we're looking at, we're taking it down about $155,000. Is that correct?
Well, it
Jeff?
sounds like, though,
That's
Mr. Nunziato got a 3-2 in favor of one of those jobs.
Okay.
So I think you could only take all but one of the positions
He's
out.
giving me the evil eye.
Who's giving you the
Bill.
Bill, well. So what, as he's working on that, Mr. Nunziato.
117,000 without the. This is this year, the half-year salaries.
I had a question in light of, if you go back maybe to the very first slide that showed the increases, it's probably after that. I think it was the, keep going. There you go. All right, is that it? Yeah. It appears as if the O&E budget is up by 1.58 million. And it sounds like of that if Mr. Nunziato has his calculator, maybe he could keep the running total. salaries are not in that, but pension is in that number. So that's what, 473, 157.
1/3 of it, basically.
I'm just trying to calculate of the total 1.58 million, how much of that is soft or variable rather than fixed expenses that we couldn't necessarily touch. So if we had 1.58 and we back out 473, do you have your calculator going, Mr. Nuzzo?
Yes.
You have, okay. And then we take out Social Security, which is 50,000. And it looks like increases in fuel and utilities is 199,000. So what's that total?
That's 722,000.
720?
About half.
So we roughly have about 720,000 in discretionary O&E monies that I think, quite frankly, we need to go back and revisit, which could potentially, in the event we were at liberty to do it, reduce that 13.7% increase in the O&E by half. Now, clearly, there may be some things in the O&E that we needed to increase, new projects, new expenditures, whatever, and we have to talk about that. But it sounds like of the 1.58, I think in fairness, we need to, I think, look at it, and maybe, unless the council disagrees, for the next presentation to the public, when we finalize it, maybe, Mr. Chernetsky, we can separate fixed O&E and variable O&E, so people understand we're not just increasing spending to the tune of 1.58 million.
Correct. Jeffrey,
Mr.
do we have a
Mayor,
general?
If I may correct one
looking at
thing,
it
there
right
are a
now.
couple items that are statutorily required that we hadn't talked about, deferred charge and deficit in the sewer utility, which is another 400,000. So our actual OE increase of discretionary spending is up 370,000. On a $4 million OE, it's up 1.2%.
Right, which is,
So our discretionary spending is up 1.2%, and everything else is locked in where we, unless we decided to just shut down the town, there's nothing we could do.
Services.
So we're at bare bones.
On a $40 million budget, it's up 1.2%.
No, the
Discretionary
part.
spending.
discretionary other expense, non-salary items that you could have an effect on without cutting services or anything like that,
It's 1.2.
that you could adjust if you wanted to, but it went up 1.2%.
Let me say
$4
that,
million.
Everything else is pretty much fixed and
I just
enforced
saw,
upon us.
but I just so I understand the number, on $4 million. Is that what you said?
Yes,
It went up 370,000.
right.
That's like 9%, sir.
I'm sorry, 1.2 cents, 9.7%, you're right.
Okay.
what is
Reading
it?
the wrong column, 9.7%.
So it's 1.2
1.2
cents.
So
Okay. So let's say it another way. If we go back to the if we can do that, Tom, if we go back to the 1,583,000, it sounds like of that number, 1.2 million we couldn't touch. And 370,000 is discretionary on, we want to spend this, we want to do this, et cetera, et cetera. So I still think 370 is necessary to revisit.
well, we have, I mean, that's this whole book.
And we have the whole,
That's
we
the
have the
book,
whole
so-
pages. Now, if we could just spend a moment and.
My hope, Mayor, was to, once I'm done with this, to get into that. You close
Gotcha.
the computer down and go through that.
Okay,
and
so we'll do
talk
that
about it.
next. Is it make sense to talk about the debt piece now, or when you're at your council, or the console, I should say?
Looks like everything's down.
That's part of the capital program.
It's part of the capital, all right.
It's all
Okay.
regarded as an investment.
So are there any more questions from Mr. Chernetsky on his presentation before we get into the actual pages again? Do you want to do that piece for us?
If you'd like me
Please.
to,
Yeah.
it's your call, Mayor.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Can everyone see around me, council members? Okay, the way the capital portion of the budget works is you identify what you think you're going to need by way of improvements that are listed in state law that you can make, that you can borrow money for, and you can bond for and incur debt for. You then have to raise 5% within the budget as a down payment. So what we're proposing for 2006 is a $350,000 down payment. That represents total new debt of approximately $5.8 million. If we were to anticipate what that would do to the budget in future years, it would be approximately $170,000 a year over the next 15 years.
So basically, we're $1,000 over because we're spending about $349 now. So on non-land acquisition capital, maybe we say it that way, on non-land
Correct.
acquisition capital.
This does not include acquisition of land.
Okay.
But that's reflected elsewhere in the presentation.
Gotcha. Okay.
I have a very, you know, God bless me with being able to look at numbers. And I'm just having a hard time. 170,000 a year is all it's going to cost for the next 15 years?
That's for what we're proposing for the capital improvement project, not including open space.
That's just that's the value of the $350,000 down payment.
I understand.
The balance is what that's going to do on bonding for an extra the total of the 350. Let me say it this way. If 5% is the 350, what's the remaining 95% worth, Mr. Filiatro, if it was real dollars and we weren't bonding?
5.8.
5.8 million.
So 5.8 million a year over the next 15 years.
Not a year.
Would be 400,000 a year almost, minus the 350,000. It'd be about $360,000, $370,000 a year to pay off $5.8 million.
Is that right, Ms. Filiatro?
Where do you see, oh, at the bottom, it says 15
So you're
years.
saying you think the 170 is wrong?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely, it's wrong. I don't think it's
Yeah,
wrong.
I couldn't look at it and give you a number like that.
It'd be
I
about
could-
double that.
That'd
be about double that.
387, $400,000.
Okay.
No, absolutely right.
My sincere apologies.
Okay.
We
So the-
were
so
adding
the-
these sheets as,
So the future obligation is not
Oh, my
170, it is, how much, Mr. Filiatro?
About 400,000.
It's about $400,000 a year.
There, it says right there, annual
In-
debt payment, 420.
Go to the next slide. Or there it is, okay. All right, so there's-
I have no
okay.
confidence in this now, so,
Okay.
But it says,
But I think your next slide has it right. The 170 is wrong, but the next
Correct on
slide,
the
the next slide has it right at 420.
That's but that's
No,
kind of a
no, I'm
different
still-
number.
That's the annual debt.
Okay, so it's still in there. All right, so we really can't look at this particular page. Okay.
I sincerely apologize.
It's a draft.
Okay, that will be.
Well, we haven't gone through yet, as a collective body, the total of what that 350,000 is going to get us. Management's going to give us their recommendations on what they want from a capital perspective, so,
Actually, the manager has, in this presentation as we move forward, has made a presentation. The capital sheets that I printed out and have provided for you do tie in with the manager's presentation, and he's
Right.
he's making recommendations.
yes, he's making those recommendations, and with all due respect to Mr. Chernetsky, I mean, we may decide that contrary to some of the recommendations, we might not buy or bond for everything he's asking for.
Exactly.
So,
Correct.
the numbers aren't, they're not set
Just as an aside, to go back to what you brought up before about O&E, I just quickly flipped through that book, and almost all of it is in police and 9/11 and expenses. The discretionary.
9%?
Yeah.
Mr. Rush, thank you for pointing that out.
With
I'm
all due
very
respect-
sorry. I'm very
With all due
sorry.
respect, I really need accurate numbers to
Yes.
make accurate decisions and help make decisions for the people of Howell.
And you deserve
I
it.
think we all do, and clearly, we've got to make certain that that all the numbers are right.
Okay. So just, again, this is we're working on this to the last minute. Here's our preliminary debt analysis here. 2005 full municipal debt is $41.5 million. Of that, $2.4 million is for open space and property acquisition. The annual debt payment on that 41 is 3.445, and the corresponding open space portion is 1.3. Our total capacity is 173 million that we can incur in debt.
So let me ask a couple of questions on this, Mr. Chernetsky, make sure I understand it. We're saying that right now, the town, over a cumulative period of over however many years, has bonded to the tune of 41,500,000.
Correct.
And we are paying sort of the interest, so to speak, or our debt payment on that is about $3.4 million every year.
Correct.
So every year, we open up the municipal budget with an obligation to fund $3.4 million.
Correct.
And
In debt service.
in debt service alone, which is, how many cents does that represent in and of itself, Mr. Filiatro?
10 cents. About 10 cents.
About 10 cents.
Maybe a little bit more. Maybe about 13, 14.
That's 0.29, but it was-
Yeah, on a .2, well, whatever the new rate is.
That's 11.5 cents.
Yeah.
So that's 11.5 cents alone. Okay. And then obviously, there's new revenue that comes in that helps bring down that number so that we don't always open up with 11.5 cents. Now, what are the remaining portions where you have supplemental
Okay.
open space, 7,500,000?
This is related to ongoing litigation for purchasing other property. 7.5 additional to the 20.4 has been authorized, which would result in, well, just let me say, that's been authorized, but the debt has not yet been incurred.
You're talking about Pinnacle.
Correct.
So we have authorized an additional 7.5, although we haven't gone to sell the bond notes yet.
Correct.
And I think we have 5.4 and change allocated toward Pinnacle anyway, correct?
Right.
Yeah, we haven't actually authorized, we've authorized 3.8 of the 7.5.
We've authorized 3.8 of the 7.5, but of
That's a
the,
potential if we,
but of the original
have
that
to-
we bonded for what was thought to be Harms Pinnacle collectively, one was 12 and change, and then the remaining of what the initial bond architecture called for leaves 5 and change, right?
right.
Plus the 3.8 leaves us,
Plus the 3.8?
well, you pass the 3.8.
5.4 plus you just passed the 3.8.
Right. Now, we haven't sold the 3.8. We passed it, but we
have not
haven't.
borrowed the 3.8.
We have not borrowed that yet, and I'm going to ask the council to not move on that. So, but at least not yet. But we've got 5.4 set aside potentially for Pinnacle.
I believe that's,
Sure.
I believe it was 17.9.
The total.
The original.
Right. So there's
The original
5.4
amount was
left.
17.9.
So there's total of 5.4 left. Okay.
It may be.
Could you just check that for me, please?
All right, I think we have this slide, Mr. Chernetsky, and we'll spend more time on this at another date.
Okay. Okay, just to get a handle on where we stand with the open space tax trust fund, only because there was a suggestion that we may want to go out to referendum to increase the revenue that comes in from it. We reminded council that we're in the midst of a reval. We're not even halfway done with that, by the way. That question was asked last time. So the revenue from 2005.
Mr. Chernetsky, would you hold on
yes.
1 second? I think Councilman Walsh has a question. Go ahead, sir.
So not even halfway done, so there is no way we'll make it by October 1st, so that the appeals can go on for the last two, for the first quarter of this year and last quarter of this year and the first quarter of next year. We will not be done, because we started like in October. So we're 8 months into the process, so we're not even halfway done.
Not at this rate. Jeff, do you have any, I had sent a memo to the, in all fairness, let me just say this. I sent a memo to the assessor asking for an update, and I quickly thumbed through my mail and just noted the figure, and I didn't have any follow-up questions for him. It happened this evening. So I'll get you a more complete report, but as of now, we're not halfway done.
And in fairness, and I appreciate the concern, because we all want to get this revalue done. I recall that when this was presented to us, we were told it was going to take a full 12 months before they would get the whole thing done. So if they started in October, they didn't actually begin, I don't think they began the field inspections until maybe at least a month or two after, because we did the public meetings. So they might not have started until the December, January, to maybe November or December, when they actually started doing the field work.
They told us
But-
originally, told us when they started this, this would not look to have closure till after October.
That's right.
Because the appeals are supposed to be in the last quarter of this year, the first quarter of
Next year.
2007. Was supposed to, the increase is supposed to take place in the second half of 2007.
Let's call it the change.
Okay? The
All right.
increase.
When we talk about the 682 that's committed to county farmland, Mr. Janetzky,
Yeah.
give us the lowdown, or the summary on what that is.
That's land that we know is in the process of,
Contract arrangements.
right, with
Okay.
through the county farmland preservation program.
So we've got about $719,000 left in our open space acquisition fund for both, well, a portion of that is available for just farms, and a portion of that, based on the additional collection, is farms and open space.
Correct.
The 682,000 is the old 1% that is available for just farms.
Right.
Based on the old
Oh,
referendum.
so the 719 is available for both?
719 is available for all of the projects allowed
Okay.
under farmland, recreation.
Good, but it
open
looks like the
space.
682,409 is spoken for and already committed to. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
So
Okay.
there's only 32,000.
No, there's 719,000.
So that will leave us 0 for the farms?
No.
No.
Well-
719 can be used for farms
Or-
Open
open.
space.
The 6882 was a part of the original 1 penny from, what was it, 98, 99? And at the time, you could only use that for farms.
And that's already spoken for.
That's already committed, well, I think we're in contract negotiations where we're waiting to get back through John Costigan, the real estate appraisals, the negotiating amounts
Okay.
per acre, but it looks like that's been spoken for,
Money we've been advised to have
to
aside.
set aside.
Okay, so the free balance is 719,000, and that will be applied to service the debt on the open space bond for the various properties that have been acquired.
Well, I want to make sure I understand that last point, I'm sorry. So the 719 isn't money that we could say to you, all right, Mr. Janetzky, you got $719,000, go buy us another big piece of land. A piece of that is going to be used to pay down the naturally accumulating debt on having this tax. Is that right?
The debt on Bonham, Price,
Okay.
what is the other one?
Bonham, Price, and the Lake
Bonham,
Louise.
Price, Lake Louise,
Louise.
and Harms.
And Harms.
And Harms.
So do we know of the 719, if you back out the debt obligations to pay down the interest on those, how much is then left?
Well, the debt obligations on the three open space acquisitions is about 1.3. So the 719 will only cover about half of it.
There'll be nothing left.
So the answer is, we really don't have 719, because the 719 is being applied in this budget to help us pay down, is that right?
We're advocating 700.
You're advocating
Right.
719.
Right.
So that's
700 even.
So you want to use 700,000, and has that been factored into our current debt obligation?
Yes. Now, keep in mind that it's going to be replenished by the annual revenue from the open space tax, which through, and this is why we need to be cautious about going back out to the public asking for an increase in the
Good.
open space tax, because through revaluation, it's still going to be, two tax points
Yep.
based on a higher assessed value.
So then are we saying that the 719 is going to be used, but we anticipate that we're going to pick up another 588 this year by
Yes,
virtue of the
we will.
revenue?
Yes, we will.
So now I got it. Okay. Everybody follow that?
I
I'm sorry if
think
I'm
what-
slow in here. at the
It's
gate.
okay. I'm glad you questioned it, Mayor.
So we got 588 that we're going to, so if we were to say, how much money do we have set aside, putting aside any new acquisitions like Pinnacle or what have you, 588 is how much we have to buy, for example, the additional property where the Pinelanders play soccer. If we wanted to buy the additional acreage back there, we could use that money.
The 588
We
in
could use
future years.
up to 588.
You could accept, bear in mind now that if we don't continue to use the income from the open space tax to fund the debt, then you'll have to raise that otherwise. But because we anticipate an increase
Gotcha.
at the 2 cents, you'll have that and then some, more than likely.
All right, any other questions on this
To
item?
boil this down, what I think, using the presumption, and I think when talking to the tax assessor, when we were talking about the reval, was the assessments, we're expecting them to about double. Right, the natural effect of that with the fixed 2-cent tax rate is, although we get 588 for 2006, in 2007, we'll get 1.1 million.
Okay.
Right, which is why we would encourage your council to think twice about
Point well
going
taken.
out to referendum, on top of which the county has an open space tax
Yep.
that will also
Okay.
increase with the
All
assessment.
right, what's next?
Can I have clarity on something? With how much we have bonded for right now, what else do we also have promised that's not in that bonding? Like we spoke about some with the Pinnacle. And
Okay.
I want to be clear about how much we are going to owe debt on.
Okay.
And I, go whatever way you want, but at the end, I want to know a total.
For open space.
Or an entire.
Okay, tell me how much we're going to owe for open space.
Okay, this
20.4 million.
plus, if you go forward, plus this.
So 27.9 million in open space. Okay. How much in capital do we have bonded for?
What's the difference between the 41,477 and the 20 million?
21.
The 41 is the total we bonded. Of that, 20.4 million is open space.
Okay, so that is, our total debt right there is $41 million that we have out bonded.
Total township-wide.
Now that we have to service that debt, yes.
Now add the 7.5 to it, probably?
Well, potentially, we haven't,
Potentially, it's been authorized but not issued, so we don't owe anything on it yet.
Okay,
Potentially, you're right. 49
yeah.
million.
okay. And then if it's any more, that also, okay?
Correct.
Because that was a question I asked you to
Yes, sir.
find out from me. So that is total what we have out there that we owe money on, whether it be capital, anything under the sun.
Correct.
The best way to look at it is we have 41.4 million, and then if we decide to proceed with the extra 7.5 and the extra 3.8, that would then be added to the 41.
At about what interest rate is that, Mr. Filiaccio? I know it's got to be a meld, but what would you say, 4 or 5%?
But using current interest rate right now, about 4.5%.
But some of it's older debt that's a little cheaper?
No, all of this debt is new, just issued last year.
So we had zero debt before last year?
We paid the last debt payment on the last bond last year
So we owed zero?
for 2 months.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
No, just no big deal. No
I mean,
big
it
deal.
isn't as if the town
I
hadn't
mean, it's-
bonded
well,
3, 4,
and
or
it's
5
not as
years
though-
ago.
It's not as though the town hasn't authorized debt. It's just that we had not issued permanent debt. We were working on bond anticipation notes
I understand.
and available cash. You had been authorizing bonds since 1999 in increments to do a number of various capital things. It was with the interest rates being as low as they were that we decided to consolidate all these old debts
Right.
and fix that interest rate now.
We just need to make sure that people don't think that
Yeah.
in 1 year, we bonded $41 million.
No, it has been a
You
7-year process.
refinanced old debt.
They
We
But-
refinanced.
I can see how that might show up at a later date, you know?
I refinanced temporary
Not
loans
for me.
with a mortgage.
Right. A municipality can get temporary loans called bond anticipation notes. And that's what we had a temporary debt that we consolidated into one bond.
All right, any other questions on this sheet?
I just wanted to say, at 4.5%, did you say, Mr. Filiaccio?
Yes, sir.
And is that over 30 years, 15 years, 40 years, or different
The-
varying notes?
The current bond is a 30-year note.
Current bond's a
30-year
30-year note.
mortgage, yes.
That may understand why your payment was at $170,000, sir.
Yeah, because it was 30 years.
It was a 30-year note, not a
That's a
15.
whole miscalculation, that one. That really
Okay.
does not calculate.
But that may
Even at
explain
30
it.
years, it doesn't calculate
That's what I
out
said
right.
before.
Well,
It's
that's what I
probably
walked
30,
over to
not 50.
whisper to him to find out if that was a
All right,
mistake.
keep going, Mr. Chansky. I want to keep us on target here.
Okay.
All right, so we covered open space. Okay, now we're getting into the other capital items.
Other capital. You know what, Mr. Chernetsky, I'm going to recommend, I don't think any of us would be offended if you sat down. You've been standing up for about 3 hours, for goodness sakes. Why don't you take your mouse and your microphone and take a load off? No, quite to the contrary, but standing there all night, it's got to get uncomfortable.
Now, these items do tie down with your
You just hit that
worksheets.
projector, by the way, where it's now.
This is all on our worksheet, sir?
I added a column to our worksheets. There's a final manager's recommendation. It's about the third column over,
Okay.
and that's what he's going to be presenting.
All right, so we're on vehicles.
Okay. Before I even started here, I attended a work session, officially on payroll, and council said, we need a plan to replace our vehicles. So I went out and reviewed 2 or 3 studies that other communities had commissioned. And basically, what I'd like to communicate is that in all of these studies, the indications are that once a vehicle hits 7 years, and once a car or a van hits anywhere between 80 and 100,000 miles, the costs of servicing that vehicle in terms of finding outdated parts, frequency of breakdown, rises to such a point that it's more cost effective to replace those vehicles. So what we need to do is put all our vehicles on a replacement plan, and that is something we're working on. In terms of what was requested, I applied that criteria to the items that were requested from various departments, and here's where we stand. We have a van that carries about 14 senior citizens. It's 11 years old. It has 168,000 miles on it, and it's one of 2 vans that they have. I believe it's mission critical. That's what MC stands for. In our engineering department, we have a Jeep that's 16 years old with 145,000 miles on it. In the assessor's office, we have a 9-year-old vehicle, 118,000 miles. Code enforcement, the numbers speak for themselves. And then additionally, you have a ambulance that we fund a new ambulance on a rotational basis. That totals an investment of $425,000 and the down payment of $21,250. And that's reflected in the budget overview that I gave you.
So let's look at next year, the whole fleet. Now, this catches up, I guess, to all the vehicles that should have possibly been replaced before. But once you go past this year, when you looked out and projected, would it be just a similar amount of vehicles next year, or would it be less?
I haven't gotten to that yet.
Okay.
The only comment I'll make on this whole fleet vehicle situation, and we're in the situation we're in now, and it might not be as easy as private industry, but in private industry at a time with a different employer, the certain staff got a fleet vehicle, and we leased them. The company leased them, and at 50,000 miles, the cars were returned, because that was about the point where it made sense to return them, and then the company that we leased them from would then resell them to Avis or Hertz or whatever the case may be. And we were constantly in a situation where people had reliable vehicles that didn't hit that breaking point. And I really think that we need to explore to the you can't obviously do this with vans and other kinds of things, but just being around the town and looking in the various parking lots, I see a lot of regular vehicles, non-senior vans and those kinds of things. And I really think we need to explore whether or not we get out of the ownership business and we get into the leasing business, so that we don't own any vehicles and that we return them while they still have a reasonable shelf life. And those expenses include things like insurance and certain maintenance. And there are a number of companies that do fleet kind of work. Perhaps it may offer us the opportunity to get some savings. And maybe we, at some point, we say whatever vehicles we own, we sell them all, and we move into this lease arrangement where any vehicle we have, we get into that kind of a program. So perhaps that's something we could look at for next year's budget. unless anybody disagrees.
No, a long time ago, I ran a facility in Newark, and that's exactly what we did. We did a comparison as to owning versus leasing, and we wound up using Hertz as a leasing entity
Right.
for all our trucks, and for that exact reason.
There's a
They
reason.
maintained it, they,
There's a reason why most major industries that provide fleet vehicles or their associates with access to a car never own them.
Maybe-
And I think we should look at that.
Maybe we can pull one or two as a pilot and see over time
it's worth exploring.
how
Yeah.
it works out for us. In looking at these studies, the one complicating factor is, the cost for maintenance was supposed to come down as a result of the acquisitions, and there was a breaking point where it made more sense. The thing that really complicates things here for us is that we maintain vehicles for other entities, and we have a fully staffed, mechanics
Sure.
department for that purpose.
That's right. So, all right, well, before we move off this page, anyone have any comments? Let's try and,
What's the total number of vehicles in our fleet?
Of the total in our fleet,
I forget. I had it somewhere.
I'd like to ask
about a half an inch.
I would like to ask a question. How long are we going to pay them off over what period of time?
Jeffrey, that's a 15-year.
No, most vehicles are 5-year vehicles.
Yeah, I was
The
gonna-
state doesn't give us a whole lot of time to pay them off. Some of the bigger ones are perhaps, the senior van. We might get 7 years or something like that out of that. You get into like the big dump trucks that we talk about for Public Works that we haven't talked about yet. We'll get a little bit more time on that. They're probably 7 to 10 year lives. But there's a state statute. It's not really useful life as we would look at useful life as far as how long it's going to ride on the road. There's a state statute that says how long you can borrow for. That's the life that we're discussing.
Right.
So we
Okay.
would handle that through a bond anticipation note then, right? To pay it off.
Yeah.
Okay.
We could, usually a bond anticipation note, which we can roll for a 10-year period, is much cheaper than going
Mhm.
into bonding. So normally that's what we would do with
Okay.
that.
Okay?
any other
And-
questions
and
on this page?
I would tell you, just to be clear, the employees assigned to these vehicles need a vehicle.
Mhm.
They need a vehicle.
Okay. Now, as it relates to the vehicles that are coming off the road, there's at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there are 6 vehicles that will be coming off the road.
Correct.
So I think our normal procedure is we go to sell those vehicles
Correct.
at some
Auction.
auction at some terribly low rate where, I mean, do we know what this may generate by way of revenue for vehicles with these kind of mileage?
Not substantially a lot.
5,000, 10,000?
They go for
No.
$400 or $500 a piece if we're lucky.
Well, what I would ask the council then to consider would be to talk to, let's talk to some other entities in the municipality. For us to sell these vehicles at a revenue of $500, maybe one of the fire companies, maybe one of the first aid squads, maybe another entity that kicks into the tax levy may have use for a vehicle that has 120,000 miles on it, based on what they can use it for. So I'd like us to
Well,
solicit those other
Well,
entities.
maybe
what
like,
en-
for example, the
entity
Office of
you're
Emergency
talking
Management can
about.
use the senior
See,
van, carry a
Depends
lot
what
of people.
type of entity you're talking about. Another government
On
entity,
occasion.
we can.
Yeah, only a government entity.
Yeah.
I mean, for
We have
example.
with the school board, we've done that before. We've
Mm-hmm.
done with the school board and stuff, we've done it in the
Yeah,
past.
I don't know what the school board wants with a 14-passenger van that's got almost 200,000 miles on it,
The school board may not use it, but perhaps, perhaps the first aid squad on Kent Road.
Well, see,
could-
that's why I asked, because
So we
First
couldn't
Aid
give it to
Squad
them?
is a 501c3,
They
not
can't.
government.
What about
We
Office of
cannot-
Emergency Management? That
We cannot
occasional,
give that, we
People
have
carry.
to, we either have to
They-
give them to another government
they have
agency
to.
or we must auction.
All
They
right.
have good vehicles.
Well, we'll let the administrative team do it. I mean, I think our preference, unless anyone disagrees, if there is another government agency that could benefit from using one of these vehicles since they're already paid for, rather than have them go out and do something with it, maybe they can take advantage of it.
I just want to raise one point, Mayor. These agencies rely on us to fix the cars, too.
So it's going to come back to us?
And insure their cars, too.
What's that?
And insure their cars.
Well, do we?
Yes.
We're not
Yeah,
we're not
sometimes
insuring the
domestic
fire
property
department.
losses.
We don't insure the fire department. I don't- I mean, I think only
They use
OEM.
their own insurance.
Okay.
no, let's not be.
Keep going, Tom.
Okay, police equipment, what's being recommended is a replacement guns, traffic radar, laser measuring device, and a traffic counter. The replacement guns is generally a good practice for safety purposes. Radar is, I believe, in keeping with regulations and standards that have come down from the Attorney General's office. Laser measuring device is used to measure accident scenes.
Right.
And a traffic counter is in response to the increased demand for traffic counts.
Yeah.
So a total of $31,500. Down payment would be $1,575.
Okay.
Computer equipment, disaster recovery phase 2, $125,000, and a rack system, $10,000. And Jeffrey, you know a little bit more about this recovery system than I do.
Yeah, we started this year, some of the funding was to increase our disaster recovery capabilities. This is to provide for off-site backup, immediate backup, real-time duplication and probably the tax building, so that if any evil befalls either one of the buildings, there's fault tolerance so that we don't lose any of the data, we don't lose any of the information we have. Right. We started funding this last year. Dave Banowski did say that he was going to phase this in rather than have all the money provided in 1 year because he wasn't going to be able to do it all in 1 year. So this is phase 2 of that project. And this is equipment that will provide that real-time backup between the two buildings.
Is this the last phase, or are there more phases?
I will have to ask him. I did not think as than that. I'm sorry, I'll find out.
Yeah, I'd like that answer. If there's 10 phases, I think we need to know.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, well, let's certainly hope there isn't, because I remember during his budget presentation that my recollection was this is what he needed to have a backup system. And perhaps there are more steps, but we're going to need an awful lot of convincing because that's a lot of money for a backup system, I would think. Okay.
Okay, emergency management, communication support system, $15,000. And we are in need of professional architectural services for the interior of the building. The shell's been completed, but now we need to get sealed plans to deal with some of the storage requirements and the ADA accessible restrooms that are required.
I wasn't here.
Okay, any questions on this slide?
There were no sealed plans when they applied for how did they apply? How did they get their application to build without a sealed plan?
I think Mr. Malave has a recollection. Go ahead.
No, I just want to make sure that this is recommendations from the manager, correct?
Yes.
We're not agreeing to these right now.
He's making his presentation.
He's making his presentation,
Okay.
and I would say that just for the sake of expediency, I think as we get to each of these pages, we should be debating the old yes or no. I mean, we're going to have to review the whole thing in the end.
Right. Let's let him finish his
Right.
presentation,
Okay.
and we're going to go through
But
this.
if there's
with
any
fine-tune.
substantive discussion, this is capital. And what he's going through now,
Yeah.
rather than go
Right.
through the capital pages.
I got it.
There was a $10,000 item that was removed, I should add,
We actually
because
talked about
the need for
all these
this was
things
realized. Let me just say what was paid for was a pole barn. And now, so in terms of permits and stuff, you know, it got what it needed for a pole barn. But now, there's a need to fit the inside. And, you know, that because of it's a public use, it requires sealed plans.
So it is a pole barn and it's not a pole barn.
It is a pole barn.
It is a pole barn, and again, the footing and foundation and building permits that were required to erect that pole barn were issued and could be done using the engineering plans that were provided by the manufacturer. But that was for as the manager said, the shell of the building.
But didn't we know this last year when we approved those funds? I mean, Mr. C wasn't here, obviously, but
I think Mr. Davis presented that. And
Okay,
Mr.
keep going.
We're on page G1.
Okay.
All right, this is recreation specific.
That we're not.
Yes.
Okay.
Recreation is requesting replacing a 95 pickup with a plow that has 81,000 miles on it. What they're replacing currently isn't capable of holding a plow. So that's $27,000. 2 replacement trailers for carrying mowing equipment and such. Replacement of Oak Glen basketball court, and and the funding of the North Howell Little League facility.
Any questions on this page?
We're on page G2, just so everybody know.
I mean, these trailers, the 2 replacement trailers, what are they, $4,300 a piece? I mean, they're...
Yeah, and the trailers replaced 82 and 1982 and 1986 that no longer will carry the bigger efficient mowers that we're buying now.
So we have to buy them to carry the mowers?
Yeah, well, the 82, 86 trailers are they're in pretty bad shape too. I mean, they're not just buying them because they're too small, but that's one of the reasons why they want to replace them.
Now, replacing this 1995 pickup truck, is this going to stay in the fleet, or are we taking it off the fleet?
My recommendation is to take it off the fleet.
81,000 miles, it's almost new.
Well,
Well, okay. Any specific questions on these items for Mr.
Well, no, I just
Johnson?
remember when we were talking about putting in vehicles to replace other vehicles, we talked about making sure any one of them could handle a plow, so we could use it later.
Absolutely.
One of the services that people always complain about in town is, hey, my street wasn't cleaned fast enough. So any vehicle we ever get should be, I mean, that's a truck-type vehicle, should be capable of putting the plow on it.
I tried to separate kind of typical vans and cars and stuff from more heavy-duty type equipment, and I tried to include that in the departmental budget.
Okay. All right, let's keep
But
going.
I still want to continue to reference the age of the vehicle and the miles it
Yeah.
has on it.
Okay.
Okay. Public Works. Actually, I'm going to let Mr. Nunziato handle the Public Works capital budget.
Thank you. First, the trailer-mounted leaf vac, that's actually 2 boxes. One will be a replacement and one will be a new one.
So,
One was actually approved in 2005 and is on order. We'll get that this year.
okay.
So we'll have it for the fall.
So this is the other one.
Yes. And then, we're requesting an additional one to help the efficiency. Sometimes we have weather problems where, you can't get out there all the time, and this would
So how
allow
many
us-
total trailer-mounted leaf vacuums will we have in total?
I don't have that number in front of me.
So this is 2 or this is 1?
This is 2.
And then you've got 1 on order, so that's at least 3.
We had one last year. Like if you said, gee, wouldn't we give you one last year? Yes, we did. It's not in the fleet yet.
So we will at least have 3 if we approve this.
Well, we have several already now.
Right.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. Could you,
Wait. 2 heavy-duty trucks. Those are 7-yard Peterbilts. Those are the ones that are going to have the stainless bodies with a plow, directional plow, the radios, the tarps, and they're going to be replacing 2 older trucks, PW 55 and 56.
Yeah, I remember when we were talking about this, we reduced it from 3 down to 2. There's
And-
still one more to go, right?
And how old is old?
It doesn't have the year in here. One, I think, was in 83.
That's a good year.
Yeah, we,
Utility body with lift gate. That is to replace a 1991 shop truck with 125,000 miles on it. That cannot be fitted with a lift gate due to the age and the type of body and just the condition of the vehicle. That would be a truck for the mechanic's repair truck.
The utility body with the lift gate is the mechanic's repair truck. So if a truck breaks down while they're doing some work out in the field, the mechanic gets in that truck and drives and fixes it.
Right. Right now, he gets in a 1991 shop truck that was a hand-me-down from the sewer department that doesn't have the ability to they got to roll the large tires or whatever the equipment would be off that car or off that vehicle.
All right, what's a tink claw?
The tinkler is an attachment that goes on the front end loader, and that actually makes the bucket into a claw, and we use that. Actually, we would like to have two of them, but at this point we're going to have to live with one. It allows us to move the leaf and brush more efficiently because you don't have to scoop it. You can actually grab it and load it using a claw. Problem now is the ones that we have are older, and the hydraulic lines fail on a regular basis, which causes a lot of downtime. So that is imperative that we certainly replace that. And again, the spreader for the roll-off, what that would do is it would enable the roll-off to be converted into a sander or a spreader. Right now it's got a twin spreader. This would be a three-piece or a triple spreader, which would allow us to even increase the productivity of that vehicle when it comes to the winter use.
All right, what are the questions and comments on this page? We've got to start bringing resolution on some of this stuff.
Well, the first comment I'll make is a lot of stuff they're presenting back to us now, we've actually already deeply discussed at the various budget meetings, and they're kind of bringing back to us what we said to go ahead with. So to have deep discussions on any of these things now kind of...
Well, it's either yes or no. I mean, it's either yes or no.
Let me just, in addition to that, we pared other stuff away, even from stuff that you were undecided about, to get to this equal capital number that we did last year within $1,000, so $350.
What I'll further say, I like what you did a few slides back, where you said, you know what, these are mission-critical things. So anything that you're presenting back to us, you're not saying you did pare down even from what we had our discussions about. So all these things you're presenting are kind of mission-critical to this town still running and providing services that everybody's expecting us to provide. The leaf pickup, the snow removal,
All right. So you guys saying you just want to accept all these? Is that what we're saying?
I'm not saying that at all.
Because I'm not either.
No, there are some things that we can postpone to future years that aren't absolutely necessary that we do now.
Well, then I'll make, if that's what I'll make a further point then. I don't want to micromanage any of you. So when you come back to us next time, tell us we need this, yes or no, and then we'll give the stamp and what the whole overall number is, and we'll manage to that. Because I think we want a number. You want a number. You don't want 8 cents, obviously. So he wants to manage to like 4 cents. So here's what we got to hit. This is what we can do at that level. You make the decisions as to what's really important or not, and then we'll stamp that, rather than doing the reverse, which now has us sitting here again trying to micromanage what we need or not. So it's backwards again.
I remember Public Works, one of the things that they were adamant about they needed was the 100,000-pound lift, because they didn't have the parts.
Yeah, they need a bigger lift.
Yeah, I remember that Frank spoke about it, was adamant they needed that lift. I don't see that up there.
No, it was one of the ones we had discussed, and again, we did upgrade one of the lifts, because at one point, none of them could handle the larger equipment. Right now, we have one that handles the larger equipment, and the $100,000 would be, we have two other ones that we'd like to upgrade as well, too.
If you turn to page G2, Bob, you'll see that they put it in at 0 for this year, but they did actually request 2.
I just remember from them speaking,
In
that's
November.
all.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to recall what they said to us.
You know, we also had requested a rack body with a plow.
Right.
Again, the rack body is used for bulk pickup, okay, which now, since the center is on limited days, there's $60,000 for a rack body with a plow. So you could use it, a new vehicle now for leaf and, rather for bulk pickup. In case one of the vehicles we have now is down, you have a newer, more dependable truck. And again, that also didn't make the final cut, which was something we had, fought for in the earlier rounds as well, too.
So this is what you downsized when Department of Public Works came here and mentioned that some of the things they needed. This is what you've downsized it to.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other questions on this page?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Mr. Malave, go ahead.
I'm just, I just want to be clear. Are we making final decisions here tonight?
No.
We're not able to, because I think we want to let them get through what they'd like us to do.
Yeah, but
And I don't want to...
some of the stuff that's been recommended, I mean, I'm obviously in favor of, some I'm not. So should I just say what I'm not in
Yeah.
favor of and move
That's why I
on?
keep, yeah, that's why I say on each of these
Okay.
pages, we should be jumping in,
All right.
saying, if you go, like, for example, no on the two heavy
All
duty
right, I
trucks,
understand.
no on whatever.
Understand. I got you. Well, on this particular page, I would say on the two heavy-duty dump trucks, I will be in agreement to go with one this year.
Now, we did reduce it from 3 to 2
I understand. that.
during the regular meeting.
Look, it's my opinion, obviously, and you guys do whatever you want.
I think we're, Mike,
You see, let me give you my perspective on this very briefly. I'm of the opinion that we have to allocate a certain amount of funds, and that we should decide what the amount of funds are that we have a tolerance and that our customers have an appetite to pay for. And then we say to the management team, your total capital amount is X. And then they then go
I
back.
don't agree with that, though.
And then they figure out, what do they need from a prioritization
I don't agree with your general
perspective.
premise. My general premise is we have to figure out what services the people want and then allocate funds to pay for those services.
Exactly.
So you're
I don't-
skipping the first step,
I
is
don't-
what services are mission critical for us to do.
I don't
If
disagree.
we allocate a certain amount of funds that doesn't cover those mission critical services, then we're not doing what's best for the town.
I don't disagree, except that the end all is, what can we afford? I would love to put a pool in the yard, I'd love to have a new car.
Well, that's
Those
what
are
I'm
all mission-critical things, if you ask my wife.
I'm not getting on a soapbox here. People have certain services they've told us they want. We have an audit that says these are services we need. We should calculate what the amount of funds that are needed to do that and then manage to that, rather than trying to say this is the amount we want to spend and not necessarily providing the services that everybody's asking us to provide. So I still think we're doing this a little backwards.
I don't disagree that we have to figure out what it is that we need, but the problem is, I mean, if we go down that road, I'll tell you what people are telling me. They want
Well,
lower tax rate, they want their streets paved, they want more
they're
open
speaking out
space.
of both sides of their mouths, because every time I go out and knock on the doors, they tell me, look, I want my taxes preserved, kept low, but don't cut this out. When they're talking about schools, don't affect my schools. When they're talking about services, I don't want to have snow still sitting on my street. I don't want to have the leaves still sitting in December. I don't want to have, no parks to go to. So we have to set policy based on a majority. So what I'm saying, we have the public right now telling us, we're not doing everything they're asking us to do. So although they're telling us they don't want to be hurt by taxes, they're also saying, hey, we're not getting everything we want. So we have to figure out what is mission-critical services and then fund for that. And if they don't like that, they'll tell us at election time. But right now, we're being told certain things we're not providing. We have an infrastructure that's falling apart. So I'd rather not say, let's spend this amount of money and not accommodate both of those situations.
Let's go back to Mr. Malavi's point. He put on the table to eliminate what was started out at 3 to 2. He's recommending to go down to 1 truck.
Well, that truck, and then during the testimony, we heard that those trucks are used for many purposes. And when it's snow removal time, they're going around shoveling the roads. And so when we cut it from 3 to 2, we obviously didn't want to spend $420,000, but we were told that these trucks are old, they're constantly breaking down, and one
So
of the
you would
boxes
know.
are falling apart.
Well, let's,
I'd leave it.
All right.
I understand-
Yeah.
You'd leave it at 2. You want to leave it at 1.
We still got to get one more next year.
Correct.
Well, I mean, I believe we were told that the bodies were rotten
They're falling off.
and that they weren't going to be able to be used to service the people. I mean, if you're going to tell me that we can't plow the roads because we don't have the trucks, well, then we have to get the trucks.
Well, we're doing the same thing we did in the other meetings.
I mean, is that what you're telling me? That without these 2 trucks, we cannot provide the services to the people?
Mr. Nunziato, would you review the trucks that we have and their condition and the reason behind this request?
Certainly, sure. I can't do it. I don't have the material in front of me, but I can certainly provide it for you.
If I can recall, when Millie and the gentleman were here, they were fairly adamant that those vehicles were beyond road service. They needed to be pulled off the road. There was actually 3. One, she said that they could live with.
For a
They
year.
would, yeah, she said he was concerned about the parts. I think it was the age of the automobile, the truck, had to do with the parts available or not available. they were making do with what they had.
Let me get you more information.
So
on
are you
that.
of the mind you want to go with the two?
No, I'm in the mind that we're haggling. What we're doing is very non-productive
Exactly.
to a point.
So what's your recommendation that we do differently?
My recommendation is, we're playing with day-to-day operations versus go to something like recreation. Go somewhere like that. I mean,
We just did that one.
okay.
Mhm.
I think Cynthia's agreeing with most.
Okay, I think, you know, what I hear here is that council is focusing on these trucks. I would tell you the other things are pretty much standard
I'm not focused.
items that we need to have to operate our services. We need to get you more information on the condition of the trucks.
No, we
You know,
were provided all that.
We had all that.
We have that.
In all due fairness to you,
We have all those.
we were provided all the information. They set up here, they were very descriptive on, unless somebody was not being, I mean, they were exaggerating, but I think they're very clear. I don't think anybody was not giving us the true condition of these vehicles. This has all been hashed out. We've listened, they were very thorough on their presentation. So for us to ask you to go back and get all the information would be very unfair to you, or to Bill, or to the department.
So what do you think we should do?
I think we need to move on and let him finish his
Presentation.
program, his
Go ahead.
presentation.
All right, Mr. Malabi, we'll come back to your recommendation later, sir.
Okay.
Oh, no, you can take a straw poll.
Yeah, you can take his recommendation and duly note it.
We did. Go ahead.
Okay, building improvements. Replace 4 flagpoles, paint interior of the water tower.
We're on G3 now, by the way.
Sorry.
I'm just letting them know. So.
Replace revenue building roof. This is to budget for the senior elevator in case there isn't sufficient funds from the Community Development Block Grant, which is needed. Memorial stones and plaques, library air conditioners, police HVAC, police AC and chiller, and police septic improvements.
Okay, any questions on this page? Okay, go ahead, Tom.
All items in need of repair.
Okay.
General office furniture, filing cabinets, all that stuff I consolidated into one $10,000 page here.
Okay.
Engineering. Bill, you want to cover that?
I see, actually, hold off on office equipment, 'cause I see we had issues, obviously, with our laptops this year, where I'm the only one now using it.
It's in the clerk's budget.
Right.
And it's cut out, it is separate?
I thought it was in the clerk's budget, wasn't it?
Actually, no, we're not recommending it because we think we can go to an Adobe system, Adobe software that these computers can handle.
Good. Okay. Keep going.
Good answer.
Okay. Bill, you want to handle this?
Sure. Street overlay, the first line item, again, that was based on, my capital's dated August 29th, '05. So 1.75 million or thereabouts was the equivalent of 7 miles. That was our target, which would have done the town in roughly 20 years.
That's so crazy to think of that.
That money probably wouldn't do 7 miles at today's rates.
You mean gas has gone up?
Just a bit.
Petroleum products have gone up?
But nonetheless, we're going to keep, I don't think we should raise the number at this point.
So this is another 1.7 in addition to what we've allocated and what's being done in the spring of this year.
That is correct.
Okay.
Okay. And again, 7 miles of road, similar to what we had said last time. We're going to upgrade the roads to meet stormwater regulations. The grates and the inlets will have to be upgraded. There's driveway millings, base repair where needed, line striping, all the things that would be done on the normal 2005-2006 program, which we're going to go out to bid shortly with. The curb and sidewalk is an extension of the street overlay program, whereas the concrete work, the curbing, the sidewalks, any of the trees that have to be removed because of that, is done as a separate contract. It's more efficient to do it that way, and that's the fair share that would be required to do that amount of roadway. Intersection improvements. When we had done this, I had broken it down into 3 or 4 different areas, one of which was the the Howell Vanderveer Road long-term solution, again, at that point, we put $150,000 in there for that. You could probably, since now we have we have the guardrail in there, for all intents and purposes, I don't know if we want to do anything more long-term. If we want to reduce that number and not consider perhaps something more long-term, that number can be reduced. The other $150,000, the intersection of Easy Street, there's the flooding problem that's there. That
Let's-
was,
These two things I want to talk about for just a
Go
second.
ahead.
We had the Windler and Aldrich Road situation. Not only was it dangerous for pedestrians and people like us driving our cars, but the schools actually asked for us to change that intersection because their buses actually couldn't make the turn. So it was a public safety issue too. So I'm wondering, especially on Vanderveer where that meets Howell Road, if they're having the same problems getting school buses around those things, where we really need to have another solution other than just the guardrail protecting people from going into the guy's house. We still maybe need to fix that one in particular a little bit more than what's already done. The other one you're talking about, that's a flooding issue. I mean, you go by that every day, I'm sure.
What's an issue?
It's an issue.
Yeah.
It's dangerous all year round because the
When it ices
road
up,
is
forget it.
sinking and it's flooded.
So you said we could reduce this by $150,000?
well,
But,
If we didn't do a permanent fix on Vanderveer and Howell Road. If we
Well-
left the temporary situation.
right. And again, not that we're even saying $150,000 would be sufficient
Right.
for a long-term solution. That is what we had discussed with one of the consultants last year when we were looking at a longer-term solution. So getting back to the rest of the 300, 75,000 was the Easy Street intersection with Newton's Corner Road. 50,000 I have for various traffic calming measures with which the manager and I have been looking at several different techniques. And then I had 25,000 for miscellaneous traffic and intersection type improvements. There's some areas in town where we're required to do some improvements, and right now there is no source of funding other than if I were to use the street overlay money, which I kind of would rather use just for paving, but it is, curbs, sidewalks, drains. I think that's how that line item is now geared. So this would be more along the lines of people saying, it's a bad line of sight, or what we need to widen the road, or any type of intersection improvement that we typically get people looking at cut-throughs and that type of thing. They want the one-ways, or they want the emergency access routes, would be that type of line item. GIS upgrades.
Hold on one second. I think Mrs.
Well,
Shoemaker
he's
has
going
a-
to come to it.
Oh, all right.
I realize he's
Okay.
going down.
Go ahead.
GIS upgrades, it is capital. It's all software. Well, I have 6,000 in workstation upgrades, 2 monitors for 900, and then license renewals, which are 3,600. I don't know if that goes to MIS, and I don't see it at all, Jeffrey, or how that works. But it's equipment and licenses.
That's fine right there.
Okay. Bonham Field Phase 2. Okay, I had a slightly lower number in there, but I guess Mr. Ternetsky has adjusted that for me.
Yeah, that's based on the more recent
Okay.
estimates.
An updated number.
Yeah.
Oh,
And why do we need to, Mrs. Shoemaker had a question about this.
Yeah.
Why do we need to put this in now?
now Phase 2, this is the way it's structured? This is what we have to do this year?
You've authorized the engineering and the design of Phase 2. So the presumption here is that, that Phase 2 would be started during the year.
I don't know that we realize the tax situation that we'd be in either.
Yeah, but we could say that about a
Oh,
bunch of things. We
right.
could say that about all these dump trucks
Right.
and everything else that we didn't realize we were going to be in.
What is the, do you recall the overall project, estimate of the project?
The downside is it increases as the longer you prolong.
Yeah, it's about a $6.5 million project
Right.
altogether. It's something you can't abandon,
No.
midway through.
Yeah.
What the estimate was, what does it look like now?
I think we're still at,
That was,
Yeah.
that was why we changed it, is that's most recent estimate.
Right.
so.
But I think from the original project plan
We're still under
that we
budget.
got from Remington, Vernon, and Vina, putting aside the acquisition expense of which we're going to get half back from our PIG Green Acres application,
We're still
it's running pretty close to the vest.
Right.
Right.
I mean, which is a good thing, but it's still a big number.
Huge number.
Go ahead, Mr. Janeski.
all right, go ahead, Bill, keep going.
Okay, Echo Lake improvements. I have North Bank Landscape and Lighting for $5,000, and $20,000 is an extension of the, Monmouth County is going to be, is in the process of replacing the Echo Lake Bridge, and this would be an extension of the
contribution.
sidewalk and a walkway to the Nature Center, which is another project.
Do we need this just for the Nature Center? Or like, is this a necessity? Because the Nature Center, in my view, the more I think about it, is such a colossal duplication that I can't even believe we were convinced into going this far with it.
Well,
I thought we abandoned that.
Well,
this
we
would be-
largely have.
20,000 of it would be the extension of the pedestrian. What we were looking to create was a link between the Echo Lake Pavilion building and the potential nature center on the corner of Locust
Yeah, it
and
appears-
and
There's
Maxim
where you
Southern.
just saved
Well,
yourself
then, my opinion would be this 25,000 should be
It's
history.
5. It's 5 because you have the
5,000.
lighting.
Well, it's 5.
I mean,
Okay, that's fine.
I mean, does everybody agree?
I'm not sure. So what's going on now with the Nature Center? If we're having the Nature Center, you need a way to get to it.
I
What-
thought it was duplicated services. We had agreed that it
Well,
wasn't a good project.
I don't know if that was completely true either. They were providing a different, I mean, they're both nature centers, yes, but one was doing a different type of thing than the other, I thought.
Well, we haven't secured any grants for it yet, so far, and the idea was that it was to be funded with grants. So these Echo Lake improvements, tell me again, they're just for the path
This
to,
is for, I mean,
to where that might be?
Right now, we have the building,
No,
and
she
we
said
have a
she- she
parking
said she
lot.
was
And
aware.
it's kind of there's a walkway, but it's really just a path.
Oh, no.
Okay, so this would
No, no.
fund the walkway between the access parking lot.
Right, Monmouth
lighting.
County is going to rebuild the bridge, and they're going
Oh,
to create a
okay.
deck with a sidewalk, and we're going to go north.
But that's what this is going to fund.
North and south, correct.
Oh, okay, no.
So we don't
No,
need
no,
this for,
this
this
is-
is not the Nature Center.
No, this is not the Nature Center.
Okay.
This is, if you're familiar with Echo Lake,
Yeah.
there's a parking lot on one side of the lake. Then you walk along the road to get to the actual building, the pavilion, where there's another parking lot. Presently, there are no lights in that spillover parking lot, and there is no developed sidewalk. There's just a grass area. Increasingly, that spillover parking lot is being used for the concert
Cultural arts.
series. And so this would fund lighting of that spillover parking lot and a path to the Echo Lake
That's what I'm
proper
saying, it's
area.
not just for the
Yeah,
nature
I
center.
didn't realize that.
Except for by the-
So it's
the
not
old
just for the
skate
Nature
park.
Center, so we need it for
Right,
more than
Bill?
that.
Right,
Okay.
it's not the Nature Center.
Bill, by the old skate pond, what used to be the skating pond, on that side, across and down, okay.
All right, keep going, Mr. Nunziato.
Lake Dredger, I think we've addressed that
Mhm.
one already. Bear Swamp Culvert. Okay, we had done that as you know or may have known, back in the, I guess in the over the winter, we had a nor'easter, or we had a severe storm, and that culvert, Mr. Van Schoik's culvert had washed out. There were a couple holes in it, and it basically caved in. We had worked with him and done an emergency repair on it, and we now have the ability to cross that bridge and access the back piece. I had discussed a longer-term solution with Remington and Vernick, and they had given me a cost estimate to actually construct a culvert or a bridge on the township piece of property that would allow us free access to the back piece.
Which is how big? It's a pretty big size back there, isn't it, that we don't have access to today?
Well, we have access to it, but there's an ownership question.
But we have
with
to
the-
get access. We couldn't, for example, move the Pop Warner practice football field back there without having access and his approval.
Right, right, a bridge of this, or a crossing of this magnitude would allow us to.
Would
do
allow us to do that.
Correct.
Do you remember how big the property is back there that we're not using now?
You know, in fairness, I have it in a million different places,
All right.
but I don't have it in front of me.
But I think it was flat, dry, and clear. cleared, I should
12 acre
say.
feet you're talking about?
No, it's bigger than that. This is behind the Detroit property.
I thought that was 12.
Well, it is cleared, it is sloped, and it is, at one point, it was the headwaters of a wetland area. The drainage is not exceptional for ball fields in that
Okay.
area.
So what's then, I mean, if there isn't much we can use the land back there for, other than just keeping it open, is there a need then to have the bridge to get there?
Well, again, I would maybe defer that to Ms. Schlegel. I mean, she would be better versed as to the suitability of Bear Swamp.
I mean, the only thing I'm looking at it is if we're going to spend $125,000 to get us access to get back there, I'm hoping that it's because we're going to now be using it for some active recreational purpose. If we want to use it for just sort of passive relaxation, horse riding, what have you, and they can get over it
Well-
today, well, then that's fine.
Well, we were given the task of looking for a budget in order to create a crossing that we would be able to utilize for that type of use. Whether that use is still available, certainly Mr.
Well, then
Chinesky and I
can
can
we,
get back to
before
you.
we spend $125,000, could we, Mr. Chinesky, find out what is the planned use for that land? If we're going to spend $125,000, what are we going to use it for? Right?
Absolutely.
Find out if it's usable.
Right. I mean, if it's just going to be a big open green piece of land for what have you, then, all right, so we know what that. Stormwater management?
If we can, I can just make one comment. If I recall, the problem with that property right there, Bill, and you may remember this now, it's the parking.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what it was. I don't believe that we're going to be able to utilize that for any type of
Right.
fields because there's no viable parking area there.
And he gave him
Maybe the thing to fund here is a concept plan, a park concept plan.
So I think right now we could probably pull that 125. I don't know that it's a necessity at this time to indulge in, because I know that we did speak on that there aren't no parking facilities in that area to accommodate use for a field because the parents stay there.
And
Okay.
you're absolutely correct.
We agree with Mrs. Showmaker's recommendation,
Which is?
which is pull the 125. There isn't a planned use for it now that we know of, and let's find out what we could use it for, and then we'll address it next year. I mean, we're putting quite a bit into recreation and parks this year already.
If there's no
That
place
happens
to
to be
park.
the area where Pop Warner was talking about, right?
They were talking about it, but the problem is that, as we pointed out, there's no access from a parking perspective to get back
Yeah,
there.
the football player, they can run a half mile. If they all park and they need the fields to play.
No,
on.
it's not even that. There's not even a viable place to park along the roadway. It creates a safety issue. We discussed that.
All right, so
Well, interesting enough, though, this time last year, council had asked us to look into, fields and uses and having the ability to get back there. And now, a year later, we're looking at it and saying, well, gee, maybe we don't need to do that at this point. And I suspect that's probably the case.
I think the concern that we have is, we need to look at every piece of available property, but if this is one where we haven't even mapped out what we could potentially use it for, to set aside
Well, that's what I'm asking.
$125,000.
Is that the case, or is Pop Warner going to use it? They'll run their kids back there and use that as a field.
I don't think we're that
Forgetting
far.
I think, look, we don't have a plan for it.
Okay.
All right,
to have
we don't have a
We
plan.
agree,
I
we'll
was-
pull it out for now.
I was
Maybe you can
operating under
revisit it.
the presumption that we did have one.
Give me a better reason to spend $125,000.
All right, so
Yeah.
stormwater management, take us
I
through
got a
it.
taken.
good reason for stormwater management. It's
That's state law.
State statute.
that car wash station that we spoke of. That's a nice chunk of the stormwater management. That was actually $210,000 of that 310.
Wait a minute, 210 is for the car wash for our trucks.
Correct.
Which gives them more useful lives, as he testified last
Okay.
time.
The balance of that
They don't rot.
is pretty much requirements of the stormwater regulations, employee training, public education, stormwater pollution prevention plan, inlet retrofitting, and inlet labeling. And those,
So what's the other $100,000? I'm sorry.
some of the more of the requirements for the stormwater management policies and regulations. For instance, we have to label the other half of the town, label the inlets.
State mandates.
Right.
Yes.
And then inlet retrofitting, we'd have to buy new inlets and the covers so that the cans and bottles can't wash down the
So we
inlets.
can cut this by $210,000, what you tell me.
Well, you can leave it at 310 and get a car wash station too, yes, but
You get a lot of car washes for $210,000.
Bill, let me just add, Bill, how many, what is the requirement with respect to washing vehicles? Is all public works vehicles, or the whole municipal
Well,
fleet?
we had considered going into a cooperative with the Board of Ed, and I had talked to Jeff Sharp, of their buildings and grounds, and they don't have anything in the Board of Ed, and they would certainly be interested in exploring that with us. Right now, no, we're just required to have, we're in compliance right now, and we do have it's like an oil
It's
water
page
separator type
37, yeah.
system.
Yeah, it's on page
I think
37.
Page
Bill,
37,
that,
38.
No due respect, I think that the Board of Ed could probably, since we just passed their budget, they could probably come up with $210,000 to do this car wash on their own and let us use it. No, I'm serious. I mean, we help them out. They should be able to help us out too. I mean, it's the same dollar anyways. I mean,
Well, I will go right back to the efficiency report that Jersey Professional Management did, and they're actually estimating a savings to the town by having this facility versus washing it separately and paying for it.
over what period of time?
$50,000 a year.
Over 50,000 years?
$50,000 a year in dollar savings.
6 years.
What are we spending now? Anybody know?
Well,
Help me.
yeah, let's say for a minute that we were going to spend $20 to have these vehicles washed. And let's not forget, they don't need the carpets vacuumed and the fragrances like
That's 27.
anybody does. All right, so if we just said it was $20 to have these vehicles cleaned, and we were doing them twice a month, so that's $40 a vehicle. If we had 100 vehicles that needed to be washed, it's $4,000 a month, times 12, that's about $50,000 a year.
But the other piece of it is, they said the useful life of all the vehicles we have would be increased by 3 years. So the debt service on that is reduced
Well,
by
I think they're
quite a
saying
bit.
if we had them washed regularly, it would increase their shelf life.
Right,
So I
by
guess,
3 years.
are we not washing the vehicles regularly now?
Well, certainly, when you're talking about some of the public works equipment, there isn't a car wash out there right now that
Right.
can wash them.
Yeah.
We're washing them, but we're hosing them down by hand.
Right.
All right, so they're probably not being washed adequately at this point in time.
So what they were saying is if you have to
Mm-hmm.
replace them 3 years sooner, the debt service on replacing those vehicles sooner adds up to quite a cost, well beyond the cost of putting this facility. It would pay for itself.
I have to agree, and I appreciate what you're saying, Pete, about the return on the investment. I happen to agree with Mr. Malavi that I just cannot go to the taxpayers and say we're buying a car wash. People can't pay their taxes.
Well, don't explain it that way. Explain it, we're
I don't think
saving
they're
money.
I don't think they're going to care on a short term. I don't disagree with everything that you're saying, that there is a return on the investment. I just think we have to find another way to wash those vehicles that are in most dramatic need of being washed. For example, the county has hundreds of vehicles of a significant size. How do they wash their vehicles? Maybe we can call the county and say, we'd like to have our vehicles washed at your washing station, and they go there. I mean, I'm not dismissing the fact they need to be better
separate from the
cleaned.
county, let's stay in our own town and maybe form an interlocal services agreement with the Board of Ed that they'll share the cost of putting it in, since we're having to maintain their vehicles anyway.
I would like to explore that also with the Board of Ed, because we'll eat up what we would save in gas to bring them over to the county.
Yeah,
But how much gas costs now?
that's,
Well,
yeah.
it depends where the county, you could be right. I can't,
We're already servicing their vehicles, we might as well have them share the cost to
at a
maintain
minimum, they
them.
should share the cost, if not pick up a greater share of it, but I just,
Well,
I
none-
don't want to micromanage what we paid somebody to report back to us on.
Well,
Which
nonetheless,
said do it.
this issue
Well,
won't go away. I mean, we'll come back with it next year with a better analysis, similar to what we did with the
But-
drug.
Part of the reason we're
understand
replacing
this.
the dump trucks, which are $140,000 each, is that their bodies rotted.
but what I don't understand is, that this is, getting the bay is a great idea, and getting the car wash. But this is my fourth budget, it's the first anyone's ever brought it up to us. Did we not realize, absent this report, that we
That's
should have
why
been
we
doing this?
paid for this
Well,
report,
last
though.
year, the priority in the crisis was the salt dome. I mean, we can't, like Peter says, we can't ask for everything.
Well, also the regulations.
But I never
came
even
into-
saw it on the wish
effect.
list, because usually everybody does ask for everything, and then we go through 14 sessions like this and we pare it down.
But the
So-
regulations didn't come into effect till
The stormwater
just
regulation.
last year, yeah.
Okay. So what's the pleasure of the council? We want to keep in this $200,000?
One dump truck is $140,000. right? You spend 210 to save 3 years on 3 separate dump trucks.
I'm just
It
asking.
more than paid for itself.
You can still wash the dump trucks, Pete. I mean, they've been washed now.
But he said in here it's more expensive to do it that way, to pay outside people to do it, plus to have the cars there.
They do 'em
I would
here.
try
They-
to, I would
they
try to
hold
have an
'em down.
interlocal services agreement with the Board of Ed.
But let's just keep one thing in mind. We can go to the board and say we want an interlocal agreement, but that won't stop us from having to put money into the budget.
Oh, yeah.
So are we prepared? They may come back and say, no. They can come back and say, we'll give you 40 grand. So we have to be prepared to put in $200,000. So let's just take a quick poll.
Well, the only other comment I'll make is we talked earlier about having leased fleets. If we did that and had the lessor, I guess that's the right word, maintain the vehicles, maybe they're washing them. So depending on, again, I don't want to micromanage what you do, but if we do this comparison of fleet vehicle leasing versus owning, this plays into that.
It does.
I'm not sure
bi-
if that works for heavy-duty trucks.
Yeah, I don't know that
That,
you
that's
can-
the one.
Probably can't lease the dump trucks.
That's exactly what I did, though, many years back for air freight
Do you want to
purposes.
leave, you want to leave this in, yes or no, the car wash? We're going to pursue with the board for granted, but they can come back and say no, or,
I'd like to pursue with the board. If the board says no, then I think we have to take it out.
All right.
If they're not willing to do it with us.
okay, Mrs. Showmaker,
I agree.
you agree with,
But if we can form an
Okay.
interlocal service with the school.
Mr.
board,
Malabe?
I agree.
Which was what we discussed.
How quickly
Yeah, well,
can
we
we get
discussed
it
it,
in?
we got to get an answer out of the board, because we got to finalize our budget pretty quick. Can we
Well-
call the board tomorrow and say, are you willing to put up $100,000?
Willing to do a 75-25 share, obviously, that would be in favor.
The board picking up 75?
We just passed their budget. We all did. We all supported it, so they can help us
Well,
out
I could have
here.
an answer to you
Well-
before introduction.
Okay, so you're going to pursue it with them. You know the objective. We want them to share in a majority of the expense.
Okay. Okay, we
Move
covered,
on.
we covered this issue. 3 photocopy machines, one for the clerk's office and one for each floor of the engineering, planning and construction office.
Okay.
And what's the story? That's another great one to talk about leasing versus purchasing. If you lease them and rotate them out every 3 years,
They've looked at that.
that's what I wanted to ask. I know they did it.
We did do an experiment. They actually do not lease in New Jersey. They do a pay-by-copy.
Oh.
And we did use the cost per copy lease, if you will, at one point in time as a trial, and
Too expensive.
much
Yeah.
more expensive.
Sewer
Okay.
department.
Jeffrey, can you keep, and Bill, you guys talk about this as well?
I guess I can't.
Let's ask it this way, Mr. Filiatri, for the interest of time. Are these things we absolutely must do this year?
Yeah, the furniture and the file cabinets, probably not.
Okay, so let's take those
But
out.
pumps and generators, I mean, winding brook generator, replacement of one that is really a maintenance problem, and if it fails, we're gonna have poo down the street. Same thing with parks at Parkside and Stafford Pumping Station. These are our oldest pumping stations.
Okay.
Haven't had new pumps put in, so, again, the same results if we don't do it. I'm not advocating, I know Mr. Chernesky there showed down payment. The sewer department does have some capital funds in reserve. I'm advocating that at least the $45,000 we can pay cash for, not bond.
Great, so this will come out, you'll pay cash out of your operating budget,
We'll take cash out of the capital
out
budget.
of the capital budget for
And
the
the
sewer
sewer,
department.
yeah.
Good, next.
We're done?
Okay.
Hold on, the sewer surplus? What's this?
Jeffrey, we'll talk about the sewer surplus. That was an item, well, actually, you covered that before, didn't you?
We've talked about it
We didn't
previously.
talk about it, yeah. The sewer ran a deficit this year. I talked about that when we were talking about the annual financial statement. We actually didn't do bad on our service charges. That wasn't our problem. Our rate decreased. What happened is our growth stopped. The connection fees dropped way off.
Say that again real loud.
Our growth stopped.
Thank you.
Yeah, we would say that.
But the sewer did run at a deficit. And because of that, the taxpayers are going to have to kick in some money this coming year in order to balance the budget. I'm also concerned in the long run I'm not advocating a change in the rate at this point in time. There's a couple of things going on, and one of the first things is we're starting to hook up people on Route 9. That certainly is a plus for our revenue. So I'm not going to advocate a rate increase until we can get through this year and see just how the Route 9 does as far as the revenue, and maybe makes up some difference. Also, there is, Ocean County Utility Authority did raise their treatment costs last year. Manasquan Regional Sewage Authority, in their nice wisdom and with their surplus, did absorb that rate increase and did not pass it on to the towns. I don't think they can do that forever. If the treatment cost is 75% of cost of the sewer, if MRSA does raise the rate next year, we'll have no alternative but raise it. We can't absorb a increase in our 75% of our costs.
So in '07, we have to look at this again.
We'll have to look
Good.
at this again, absolutely.
All right, previous year projects? Go ahead.
You'll have that in your packet when I print this out and I refine it. I just wanted you to be aware of things you've approved in the past that we're still working on. When you weigh, the idea here was when you weigh the capital budget and you receive requests from residents to do things, be mindful that we still have a lot of items outstanding.
This is terrific.
Just getting right to that, we asked about 3 years ago to have this stuff actually posted in this room, so when people came in, they would see what's going on and not, they would be in the know. And it's never happened.
Put it on the website.
On the website and somewhere in this room, too.
I think, I feel in a bit of an awkward position with having heard the need for capital improvements, but my personal, management philosophy, or what I've seen work, is, you want to come back with completed projects before you ask for more.
Mm-hmm.
And that also played into the request for the assistant engineer. So I just kind of wanted to demonstrate the strategic thinking here, to kind of bring some of these things to fruition.
What I get this all the time, so you folks do too, is what am I getting for my tax dollars? If they see this online, as Cynthia just mentioned, well, at least they know all these things are going on with their tax dollars, in addition to just getting normal day-to-day services.
These things, or portions of these things, have been funded.
What's the asterisk for Old Tavern streetscape? We already talked about all of those.
Okay, these are items that are associated with grant applications.
Here's the concern I have with the streetscape out here. We're in no better situation with the traffic conditions than we were when the little boy got hit in November. Cars still go by quickly. There still isn't adequate parking. The sidewalks aren't there. And now we have not only the Pop Warner parents concerned, baseball season started again, and exactly what my concern was that we wouldn't be ready for opening day, and we weren't. And now we have a whole new group of people saying, what are we supposed to do? We're crossing the middle of the road, we're double parking and getting tickets. So do we need to make up the difference between what we've got via grants and what we don't have? Because that can't wait.
Yeah, well, the thing that we've been waiting for is a grant application that I don't believe we are going to receive. And even if we did receive it, it would take a great deal of negotiations with the county in terms of building these things and putting up fixtures, lighting fixtures in their right-of-way. So what I would like to do is give up on that grant and do something within our property that links all the parking lots in a municipal complex together through an asphalt path. It could be done very attractively and allows for, get people off the road and into that facility.
Yeah,
and we have
campus-style
funds.
university.
I believe we have sufficient funds in capital from previous years budgeted for it.
To do this?
To do that.
See, I wanted the
Yeah, we wanted
county
the
to
county
take
to-
Old Ridge Road and give us Old Tavern so that we had the right to do what we wanted.
Yeah, we had a meeting with representatives from the police department. I think Mr. Nunziato was there right after the young child was hit out here, and we did at the time give the manager direction to open up negotiations with the county to say, we want Old Tavern Road. We want control over changing the speed limit. We want control over the road. We want to put a blinking light. We had all these grandiose things that came out of it, and I'm not trying to be critical, and the hour is late, but I'm frustrated because nothing happened.
I think at this point, it's. I think you have to distinguish between long-term planning and meeting an immediate public safety issue. So I would like to proceed just with the paths. As a matter of fact, I have asked our consulting engineer for an estimate for what that might cost, and then an estimate for him to do the work, which I would bring to council for review.
And you think we have money in the capital already to cover it?
I believe we do, correct, Jeffrey?
There was some funding provided.
You're like
Last year, year
macadam-based
before,
paths,
about
like you have in a university
125,000.
between buildings and stuff? Okay.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ms. Malabi. What's your
I'm
question?
not clear as to what type of path you're talking about.
An asphalt path, about 6 feet wide, that
Right.
would connect, people park in Public Works,
Right.
they park at police, the
They walk in the
library,
street.
Right.
and so, and then they walk in the street to get over to the
Right.
field, so the crossing section. What I'd like to do is have the paths come in on our property and then create a direct, crossover at one spot. So they're not walking along the road from, like, let's say, Public Works.
Basically, you're creating a shoulder,
A shoulder, right?
so that they have a way to walk
Well,
without
not-
being
it's
in the
not
street.
necessarily, but it's in,
But
it's
but
in from the
it's
shoulder.
on
a
our
little bit.
land. It's separated.
They will still have to cross.
Off
Well,
the right
that's-
of way.
Still got to cross.
You still got to cross the
You
street.
still have to cross the street.
And the
right.
biggest issue that we took out of that meeting last November was we were going to put money aside, or we felt we already had the money, to put a blinking light so that you could cross at the corner where the Little League field is, and you could cross at Pop Warner, because that's an immediate traffic safety issue. But, I mean, do we have money to do that as well?
Unfortunately, a blinking light or any type of signalized, pedestrian actuated
It's county
signal
approval.
requires state DOT
State.
approval. And of course, since we have no jurisdiction on the road, it's the county. We have to request the county, and quite frankly, based on the speed limit of the road, they told me that type of traffic control would not qualify.
I have to tell you that so infuriates me, because I think what they should do is, before they make that decision, they should call Mr. and Mrs. Chavez, and they should ask them whether or not we need a blinking light there, because it's.
Let me ask you something
obscene.
totally out of the
Let-
box.
Let me just.
I like your macadam idea.
Right.
I kind of know the cost of building a bridge over a roadway more than I know like a pedestrian ramp over a roadway. What is the cost? Anybody have an idea what it would cost to build a pedestrian crosswalk walk above the road?
That's what I was referring to. Do
How
something.
expensive is that? It's a lot less than
I
a
don't know.
traffic bridge, I'm
I don't even
sure.
know if we could do it legally. I
Well,
mean,
let me just say about
What's
the
our
blinking
property
light.
on
One
your
of the ideas we were throwing around is, you ever see some municipalities have these red, you can send messages up on a board, that say, fireworks coming up or what have you. Right there where Public Works has one, and then across the street from the old school on a corner of
Mhm.
we were thinking what might make sense is we buy two very attractive signs, with wood, stonework around it, what have you, and that we can send digital messages to them, which can include "please slow down, children at play" kind of thing, and we can sort of make that an obvious thing.
Now, Mr. C, are we,
Still a dangerous county.
do we have
I
police
like the
presence there now during the baseball season to help cross pedestrians? No?
We do not.
I thought that was one of the things, I know unfortunately, after the kid got hit last year, there was police presence there. As a matter of fact, there was 2 police officers there after that. Did we make a policy just to stop, or, I mean, I thought that was going to continue to have police presence there
It was
during
supposed
game
to.
time. And realizing that can't be there for like practice and so forth. So it's still an issue. I mean, kids is still gonna be crossing the street, unfortunately. We should recommend that at least we have police presence there, with a card, with the flashing lights on and so forth. I mean, if you're driving down the street pretty fast and you see a police car flashing, I think that you would probably slow down. Obviously, there's a cost to that, there's an issue of manpower as well, but at least for now,
Well, let me just say, I think we ought to have a day where we review all these projects and where they stand. I'm sorry, Mr. Malavi.
no, look, it's your call. I'm just suggesting.
Yeah.
I think what might be helpful, Mr. Chernetsky, on this Old Tavern streetscape issue, that the takeaways from the meeting in November, and I have the minutes, were that we were going to petition the county that we wanted to take over the road. And at a minimum, it would become our responsibility to have to maintain the road. And oh, by the way, it's right in front of our police department, our DPW building, our municipal complex, 3 main venues for active recreation. Shouldn't we have access to that road in the first place? So the first takeaway back from November was we were going to ask the county, we want the road. The second takeaway was we anticipated difficulty from the regulators about putting a light in, but we were going to have them contact Mr. and Mrs. Chavez. And I'm not trying to be cute about it, but that we had a near tragedy on our hands because we need a blinking device there during these venues so that people could cross the road more safely. And then the third takeaway was, whether it was through a streetscape grant or something else, we were going to look into expanding the sidewalks on both sides so people could walk more safely than they are today, which is what it sounds like you're looking at doing. So if we could maybe revisit those 3 takeaways, the third you're already working on, and then you can come back to us with whatever the update is.
I wasn't part of your November meeting when you talked to the county, but maybe they misunderstood that we wanted all of road, I think it's called 21. Highway 21.
Yeah, it is.
So if we get them to understand, we only want the section that goes from maybe where recycling center is up to the corner, we only want a section of it.
Yep.
Maybe it'll be more amenable
county
to that
wasn't
than
in
the
the-
whole road,
Yes,
which they think goes all the way to
The
Point
county
Pleasant.
wasn't in the meeting. This was just our recommended takeaways, was that there were portions of the road that we felt we needed to have control over. So,
Okay, I understand.
In light of this, that this is the budget meeting, I would strongly suggest, and I know it's easy to spend money, I would strongly suggest, and I'm going to take what the mayor said earlier about his wife would like this and like that. Would you say she liked them full?
she'd like a lot of things. I
Yeah.
keep telling her no.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to say no here.
Yeah. In light of that, I think that what we should do is try to get closure to some of the projects that we've had ongoing in the previous years before we continue to start new projects.
Well, except that these are funded. Oh, these projects,
I think her point is, the thing
before
we
you start
showed
working on new
before.
stuff.
Show
Yeah.
some successes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Funded.
Yeah.
So that people know that it's realistic. Because how many times do we go back to poor Bill in the speed bumps? Oh, no.
They've been on, yeah.
I would like to see this Old Tavern Road where the Pop Warner Field become a priority. I would really like to see something done there.
Yeah.
I don't want another child to get hit, and then us sitting here saying, why has nothing been done yet?
You're exactly correct.
Mr.
That's why I-
Trinidad.
Hey, if
Nitsky.
they're gonna hold us accountable,
As they should.
God forbid something happens, they're gonna be right here.
And they practice under the lights, it's
Why haven't we
nighttime.
done something about it?
Mr. Trunitsky, I'm sure that if you have, you probably travel home possibly on 537 at times. You know the part of 537, that's County Road, where you go past Robbins Farm where the flower is there, right when you get to that section. And it hasn't been that many years. It's just been in the past few years, because I've been traveling that road for 10 years, where they put rumble strips. And they reduced the speed limit, and then when it still didn't slow down at intersection, they recently, in the past maybe year and a half, put a light down there, right at that odd intersection where I think it says Chesterfield Road.
Yeah.
That is a county road, so the county, well, in the past, they've always told us, it's always been told to us, not necessarily from the county, that is an impossibility, that they do not do that on those types of roads.
Burlington County.
But that is a road, that's Burlington County, but it does occur.
Yes,
And there are just a few houses on that road.
okay. I need to have a conversation with the county engineer.
Thanks.
Good, all right.
Thank you, sir.
So what next, what other slides did you have, Mr. Chernetsky?
Okay, just some of the other miscellaneous questions that were asked. What is our contribution to community groups this year? So for First Aid Squad, that's going to be $210,000, and the Farmingdale Fire Department, $7,500. Okay, and then that kind of wraps it up in terms of,
All right, so let's just try and re-inventory where we're at. I mean, obviously, we're not going to make
much more
final
tonight.
decisions tonight or do much more tonight. I think we have to decide, we've all heard what the situation is. I think a recap is there is a request for a total increase in dollars from '05 to '06, $2,514,243.
Right there.
That's the increase.
Mhm.
So we have to decide, but yet, at the same time, according to my notes, there is an extraordinary piece of that which we can't even touch because it is held up in
Contractual.
certain contractual fixed expenses, pension, et cetera, et cetera. So, for example, I calculate that about 48% of our increase are in things that we can't touch.
It's more than that.
And what I saw while looking at the operating expenses was that most of that was for police equipment and 9/11 equipment and Homeland Security equipment. So those are things we probably don't want to touch either.
There was about $370,000 in discretionary increases that are outside of things like capital, salary, pension, Social Security, changes in the reserve for uncollected taxes, fuels, utility, and debt payment on open space acquisition, which we know our residents continue to ask us to do. So we have potentially $370,000 to discuss, in addition to any alterations that we would make to the final capital budget that is allocated for non-open space. Is that, we agree with that much?
Yes.
Yes?
I'm not sure about your numbers directly, Mayor. I'll agree with you at this moment, but I'm going to sit down and review the numbers.
Give or take, I think Mr. Filiatri said it was about 370 that was in the O&E budget that was not tagged to something else. So, let's use that for sake of discussion.
I actually want to ask Jeff a direct question
I
on
have no
that.
issue with the rule, Mayor.
I noticed in a quick glimpse, and we didn't actually go through it tonight, so I don't want to spend too much time on it, but 119,000 of it was a purchase of one patrol car for the police. So why would that be O&E versus capital? Maybe
It comes
explain.
out of the county
Patrol,
improvement fund.
police cars are not eligible for capital.
That's
They're
what
not
I'm
even
saying. A lot
eligible
of-
for
lot of
outside
what-
cap. They must
a lot
be
of what we
operating
think was
expense.
discretionary, it's left
It might
over,
not
really
be.
isn't, because it's part of that 9/11 Homeland Security.
Well,
police stuff.
here's what we come down to. We have to decide, I think the five of us have to come back to the next meeting. We've gotten this presentation. We have to come back and decide, what are we willing to do by way of a tax increase? And then we have to come to some agreement on what the number is.
Right.
Fair enough?
We have to be ready to introduce.
When do we need to introduce this by?
Jeffrey,
No, that's not possible.
Well, we intend to plan to introduce the 23rd of this month.
As in,
The
2 weeks from
23rd
now.
of this
as in
month.
2 weeks?
As in 2 weeks.
So when are we going to go over the O&E?
So let's pick out our calendars, because it looks
we
like we're
can,
coming back. Because if we, is it necessary that we have to do it by then to comply with statutory
No.
filings?
No, it's not statutory. We are rapidly coming to the point, there's
Tax bills.
a 28-day statutory waiting period between introduction and adoption. All right, so roughly you're talking about a month
End of June.
between introduction and actually adopting the budget. So if we introduce towards the end of May, you're looking at the end of June for adoption, and that's the last possible time we have. July, we have to get our tax bills out.
So we need to have one more meeting between now and the 23rd.
So let's get our calendars out, everybody, so we can pick another meeting to finalize this.
Let me propose this. Let me see, before I talk.
I'm definitely not available the Tuesday after Memorial Day. I'll be out of state.
You're talking about next week, though, right?
Well, are we looking at next week? We
Well-
have a meeting on the 7th. We already have a meeting on the 16th,
Which is,
Tuesday the 16th.
Our regular council
Advertise the 23rd as a meeting. I do believe we may have already advertised, so you could.
Can I ask this question?
I have it on there, council budget meeting
We're
already.
going to be here. The idea was to introduce the budget that night. Why can't we, that was the only thing, why can't we just continue discussing? Jerry?
And maybe not introduce it that night?
No. we
And
would be in a
introduce-
position to- If they made adjustments here before you introduced it, that would be fine, right? They could then, I mean, we could play with the budget that night some more. We can
I
make
wouldn't-
adjustments, and then they can introduce.
I wouldn't be prepared to introduce that night there. There's so much paperwork involved. The official budget document, we got cap ordinance, you got deferred school tax. Some of that stuff I can take care of next week, the regular meeting, and get that stuff started, but I
Can we-
can't change numbers.
Can
next
we
to
move the
same
regular
night.
meeting out to the end of the month and make next Tuesday, like we did tonight, a budget meeting?
It seems, I think it seems to me as if we're kind of honed in on where we're going to look. And we don't have to go through a whole
Correct.
huge budget presentation next
No.
Tuesday night.
Listen.
If we set an hour aside and we just had some decision points,
Mhm.
we could probably still stick to our schedule.
How packed, do we know what's on the agenda for next week, as a general rule?
Well, we can always start a tiny bit earlier, I guess.
Well, the agenda wasn't that large. I do
The
have some
agenda wasn't
add-ons.
that
It wasn't
bad.
that large.
It's a regular meeting.
Next week is the regular meeting. And Mr. Walsh, you're not going to, you said you're not around on Tuesday, the
That-
30th?
Yeah, the day after Memorial Day, I'm definitely out of
Okay.
state.
Well,
Okay.
let me propose something. If by the 23rd, we could come to an agreement. It's just the formality of doing the formal introduction and announcing when the hearing is going to be. We need 3 votes, we don't need 5 for that. It's not a all or nothing. The actual adoption of the budget happens 28 days later.
So we can introduce on the 30th, you're thinking?
Yeah, if I have at least 3 people available, and if everybody's in agreement with the numbers in
So put
advance,
it on for discussion next week.
the formality of introduction isn't, you know.
Why don't we do this? We have a meeting on the 23rd, we have a meeting next Tuesday night. It's our regular agenda meeting. As I recall, the agenda was fairly light. And even if we have to table certain items to take them off from any in-depth discussion, we're going to have to do it.
So make it a discussion item 10.1, 10.2.
And let's open up the meeting with, get out whatever we can, but right up front, and then let's focus on these final salient points from a budget perspective. And I think it looks like we have to talk about, you're right, what you're circling there, the O&E function. It doesn't appear there's much we can do on the debt, excepting I'm not thinking that we should go for the extra 7.5 or bond for the extra 3 and change, but we need to talk about that in executive. And then final decisions on capital. You know, issues like, not to make light of it, but do we go with 2 dump trucks? Do we go with 1? Do we go with a car wash? Do we not? And they're all good points, but I think that's the discussion.
What I would do for your packet this weekend is I would make an itemized list of those things that aren't mandated under O&E. Yeah, I mean, we've already, decided we're limiting this to 1 employee in terms of a decision point. There's probably a couple decision points or things council still needs to be refreshed of that make sense in terms of investments or don't make sense. And then what we're proposing in capital. So we'll give you a list. You raised some questions about what we're proposing in capital. I have a clear understanding of what those concerns are, so we'll try to get you information about that. I think we'll be able to knock it out.
All right. Could you put a printout of what you did for us in our packets, please?
Yes, I will.
I'd appreciate
I will
that.
refine it, and I think that
Just fix the error in that one
payment
slide.
was based on a 30-year payout.
Yeah, that's right. That's why I said when you first
It
put
would
it
have been a
up.
little more than that, but that's okay. But
Yeah,
when
it
you
is
tell me
exactly a
15 and it's 30, what do I have to go on? I don't want to beat a dead horse.
Disagree. I don't
We
want
both
any
assumed correctly the right thing, that it was 30, not 15.
Yeah, I don't want to beat a dead horse. It's okay. But it would have been higher than that, even on a 30-year payout.
And it's not exactly a 30-year figure either, so I don't know where that number came from.
All right, so we know what our marching orders are for a week from tonight to try and at least finalize this, and then we can introduce it potentially on the 23rd, so long as we stay diligent and get through this next week.
Well, what Jeff was saying, even if he needed more time to finish it, he can
Yeah,
have 3 of us
you-
come back on the
right.
30th, because
If
Bobby can't
need
be here,
be,
and we can
from
introduce
a-
on the 30th.
Right, from a technical perspective, so long as we
Won't
all
be
have an
advertising.
agreement.
I just want to let you know in advance.
Yeah, I mean, if all we're going to do is introduce it, and we've already agreed on the detail, then that's irrelevant. Anything else, Mr. Chunietsky?
No, what did you think of approaching it this way? In terms of future years, what I'd like to do is keep this format going and then invite the department heads to defend their budgets, defend their capital improvement requests, sitting here with me after it's been paired and discussed at length. And I think we'll be able to do the budget a lot quicker
Nice.
next year.
Yep.
The one piece of this that we forget year to year is the marketing of it, the selling of the budget. And what's not here is the history of what the budget's been and the rate each year going back as many as 20, 25 years, and compare that to the budgets for the other things that people get taxed on, whether it's the school budgets, the fire district budgets, the county. If we have that data and it's public, it's much easier to sell our budget, because different from the rest of the people up here, it sounds like, I believe the public actually is a little bit more tolerant for this rate to be higher than it is right now, because they're saying to us, there's services we don't have that we need. And I see them passing budgets that I didn't think were going to pass, but they have a little bit more of a tolerance because they want that to be meeting certain needs that they have. So that history would actually help in future years, having as part of the whole presentation,
All right.
what it's been in the past.
I agree.
Chief, I will tell you that next year, when I'm sitting in the audience, and you're sitting up here,
God bless you.
remember that, because I'm gonna tell you right now, I want the government out of my pocket. I want to keep my own dollars. Let me, give me less services, let me keep my own money. I'll decide which services I want to pay for on
So-
my own.
I don't disagree with you, but I would ask you, there's certain things you can't do as an independent homeowner. You need, for us to do things collectively, you can't do individually. So I'll ask you right at that point, Juan, from the audience, tell me what you want us, let me finish. Tell me what you want us to do as a government collectively that you can't do independently as a homeowner.
And I will tell you
So
the
tell
same
us
thing,
that.
I've been saying that for 4 years now. I'll tell you the same thing I said day one. I want the government to be there to protect me and my family. God forbid there's an emergency. Give me police, give me first aid, give me fire, and pave my roads. That's all I need from the government.
What about snow removal and leaf
Well,
removal?
and the roads include
So
snow
that's
removal.
what I'm asking you. Tell us what's mission critical, not just you, I mean you as a public, and then we'll budget to that. So you're actually doing what I've been saying we should do.
Here's my recommendation to you two guys. This sounds
We're
like a
done.
good, this sounds like a good discussion over a beer at the Ivy League. They're
There you
open till
go.
12. You can go do it there. All right, two other quick house cleaning items. We all got a copy, at least I got a copy. I'm going to share it with the council from one of the state senators, Leonard Lance, and one of the Republican Assembly members asking the council to
That was a
adopt
Gombe home run, by the way,
To
from the Met fan.
to adopt a resolution calling on Governor Corzine to cut spending rather than raise taxes for this year. And I think in light of the discussions we just had tonight, I would like us to consider passing a resolution, which they've given us as a model, imploring the governor that the solution at the state level is not more spending, it's less spending. So I'd like to pass this down so that we could consider having that placed on for the agenda. The only other item that we have is we do have our meeting a week from this evening, which is our regular agenda meeting, which begins at 6:30 for the council for executive session, and then 8 o'clock for regular business.
I have one thing. when
Mr.
you're done.
Basco has one thing. Go right ahead, sir.
Oh, you're done?
Yeah, that's it.
I'm not going to announce this publicly, but there was one thing I saw
You just
that was,
did.
no, I mean the actual specific details. There was one thing I saw in one of your emails in the last day or so, Joe, that regarded a public safety issue that we all should talk about right here for a second. And once we go off the
Okay.
air,
Yep,
there
I
was-
haven't,
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I have not, unfortunately, I've been
It was
out
a
on business
huge,
the last couple of nights, and I have not had access to
When I
email.
read it,
I'll
it
be
was something I
collecting
know
it
we
tonight.
need to address. So
Okay.
when we,
All right, and when we break, we can talk about it, Mr. Trunetsky. Any other business, Mr. Trunetsky?
No, sir.
Thank you to you and Mr. Filiatro for
Thank you.
preparing this presentation. It's probably the best
Nice
budget presentation I've been exposed to, this being my fourth budget. I've never seen anything that was quite put together this well. And thanks, Mr. Nunziato, for sticking it out.
Thank you, Allison, for being here tonight.
yeah.
Yeah, that's right. All right, hearing that there's no other business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move, Mayor.
We have a motion, we need a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Safe travels, everyone.